Daly say he's familiar with Tex. Everybody knows Tex. Tex ran for office, kind of man about town in Gillette, and he lives in two worlds. He almost the same as Greg. If you knew Greg Johnson, our managing editor, he has a background in Alaska and then lived in Gillette for a while. So same thing, and Tex as well. You remember yesterday's story written by Mark Hines that about the Wapiti Elementary School where there was a bear-proof fence or a bear deterrent fence built around the school, and there was regular grizzly bear drills or even black bear. I guess they've had black bear in there. It was a pretty neat story, and a Wyoming story where, where else are you going to find a elementary school that has bear drills? Today in many of our metropolitan areas, unfortunately, schools are more likely to have intruder drills than they are bear drills. The intruder is going to be some wacko with a gun. But in Wyoming, the intruder is a wacko with claws, a grizzly bear. And it was a neat story, and it got Gillette's Tex McBride thinking, hey, I'm familiar with some bear deterrent, living in the interface of wildland human interface. Is that what they call it? The technical term. I mean, living in harmony with bears and figuring out how to be their neighbor. Tex McBride, Gillette, got in touch with Mark and said, in Alaska, we worked in the North Slope there, welding. Tex was a welder, and welding for drilling outfits, and they'd see polar bears all the time. And he said, comparatively to the Wyoming Grizz, which is nothing to mess around with, polar bears are freaking huge. His quote to Mark, polar bears do seem pretty substantial. And then, of course, Alaska's got the Kodiak bear, big brown bear. Those are big. And a lot of people now from Wyoming think our grizzly bears, they're akin to the Kodiak bear, the bears that you see in Alaska, the ones that are always perched at the top of a little waterfall, little rill that's spilling down, and they're waiting for the salmon, and they slap them right out of the air and gulp them down. They think that's Wyoming, like we got a bunch of salmon-eating, big, fat, brown bears. That's not our grizzly bear at all. I'm sure they're a relative. I'm sure DNA tests would show that you got some brother, kindred spirits, but that's not the same bear. The Wyoming grizzly they'll eat fish, but not really. In fact, I remember a study up at Yellowstone Lake when grizzlies had available, the ability to scoop out fish out of the lake, but it's difficult. I mean, think about it. How is the Wyoming grizzly going to eat a fish, going to eat a trout? They're not going to go wading in there and dive. It's hard to get a fish. There's a lot more other food sources than salmon, even though that's rich and fat and bears would love it. They're hard to get in Wyoming. Hard to find a salmon in Wyoming, but yeah, it's hard to, catch a trout. So if you were to interview a Wyoming grizzly and say, what's your preference? Trout's not high on the list. They'd say they're really hard to get this time of year. Jake, they're really tough to get the trout this time of year. And I'd rather find an elk carcass or kill an elk or eat bugs. You know what bears are eating this time of year? Well, one thing, they're eating everything. You heard, you probably read the story from Leo a few days ago. I think it was Leo. It might have been Andrew, actually, but I forget. Yeah, I think it was Andrew. That bears are in hyperphagia. It's a state of crazed eating where bears have to put on weight because they know hibernation is coming. They know they're heading to the den soon, and there'll be no more eating for a while. So it is feast before famine. It's like you Catholics when Lent. I don't say you Catholic. I'm a former Catholic. Kind of still, consider myself somewhat Catholic. So I remember with Lent coming, you were going to give up chocolate or something. I mean, so obviously before Lent, you would eat chocolate like crazy. Yeah, these bears are about to go into the den and hibernate. So they're putting on food. And it's one of the most dangerous times to encounter bears. Spring, when they're waking up, they're cranky and they're hungry. And they're protecting cubs coming out of the den. Sows are, and the boars are likely protecting a food source they stumbled upon coming out of the den, waking up. So spring is never good to encounter a grizzly. They're like me in the morning, a little bit cranky, a little bit hangry, really hangry. Bad time to bump into a grizz. Spring. And then fall, second worst time. And you got a bunch of elk hunters out there spreading out into the woods and encountering grizzly bears at a time when the grizz is thinking about nothing but eating. What's the, 30,000 calories a day, something like that, these bears are putting on? That's crazy. They're just eating. They're eating everything. So, this time of the year, what are they eating? Or at least a couple of weeks ago, what were they eating? Moths, gypsy moths for the most part. You'll see bears up there in the scree. Look that up if you're unfamiliar, kids. And they'll be tumping over rocks and looking under the rocks to get moths. And they'll eat moths by the mouthful. And they'll eat 30,000 calories of moths in a day. That's a lot of moths. And they can have them because moths are, kind of aggravating to me. They get in the house and they fly around. And you got to get the candle with the water so you can attract them to the candle and then they fall in the water. Anybody done that trick? I'm going to check a weather forecast. It looks like we're stabilizing with our broadcast. I'm so sorry for, I know on our inaugural day, Tuesday, when we launched October 1st, we expected there'd be growing pains and there'd be things. And there were, because we've never done this. I got news for you. This is a whole new venture. We know how to do news. CowboyStateDaily.com. You're checking that every day. You're reading news stories, 10, 12 stories a day from reporters across the state. We're really good at that. Then we thought, let's try podcast and news with Wendy Core that goes on radio, that goes on video. And there was some bumps in the road, but Wendy managed it from day one like a champ, and we got that smoothed out, ironed out. And then the boss had this great idea. Let's do a morning radio show. What a madman this boss is, let me tell you. I can say that because Jimmy's not up this morning. I think he's sleeping in. Let's hope. And, his idea was to do a morning show. And I remember taking the call when he hatched this idea. He knew that my background was radio. He knew that I used to be a radio guy. And he called me, and I was in Du Bois at the time. I was in a Du Bois hotel. I had just gotten out of the pool. Oh, beautiful summer day, relaxing. And he says, thinking about starting a radio morning show. What do you think? I thought, man, that's a good idea. I'm the perfect guy for it. That sounds like fun. I'd have to get up early, which I don't like, but that sounds like fun. It sounds like it really fits the model, like what we're trying to achieve, which is spread the news in Wyoming, give people the news any way we can, whether you read it, hear it, see it, We just want to spread the love and do the Wyoming thing. So that fit right in the business model. And I thought I could do it before I figured out I have the world's oldest computer, apparently. And so Tuesday was our official launch, and it was pretty good. Yesterday, I had a lot of fun. I thought yesterday was working out well. And then I got a whole new computer system that could keep up with what we're trying to do. And like a fool, I went right in and instituted all of it. I should have waited till over the weekend and test it. But I got so excited. I'm like, oh, now we're cooking. And I hooked everything up. And of course, whenever you get a new computer, everybody knows you get a new computer, you got to download 5 zillion updates. None of your links work, the places you used to go. You used to just click on this and it happened. Now you click on this and the computer wants to ask you a couple questions about who you are, who your parents were, when you arrived here on the Mayflower. Come on. Why can't it just work like the old machine did, only better? That's a whole conversation. I actually talked to a IT guy the other day about the fact that don't you think on the interweb, don't you think when you're on your computer that the prevalence of having to put in your password, having the password double checked, and then having an authentication device, like it's just so much harder to do stuff than it used to be. Used to be, before everybody was interested in hacking our password and stealing our identity. You're welcome to my identity. You can have it. Have fun with that when you steal it, whoever you hackers are. Before AT&T and some major bank, and pretty much now everyone has admitted, every large business or organization has admitted, you know what? We had a hack the other day and they stole everybody's password. At this point, every person that's ever typed on a computer, your password's been stolen. Facebook, everybody stole your identity and they're trying to get new friends. They're messing around on Facebook. Everyone's password stole. Yes, I said stolt. So why the hyper security? Why can't I get on something that I've already given it my password? It already knows me. I'm on the same machine. And every once in a while, somehow I'm signed out again. And I got to sign back in. And I got to get an authentication text to another device. Pretty soon I got like 4 devices going. The phone, the iPad, a laptop, the iMac. All trying to agree that I'm me and not the guy who stole my identity. I thought years ago we'd all be flying around on our own spaceships like the Jetsons. Weren't we promised our own personal spaceships? Like we will all be flying around. There'd be no traffic. The whole world was going to be better because technology was going to make life better and we'd be flying around in our spaceships and everything would be cool. No, it's worse than 20 years ago. I can't even sign on to my email. Until 8 minutes of struggling, remembering a password that everyone in the world has but me. Because it's been stolen by everybody. And I can't remember it. And it's pointless to even have it because everybody else got it. Yeah. All right. That's my rant for the day anyway. So I'm still trying to learn like what's going on with this new computer system. I'm going to have to take another break because I'm still not convinced my Zoom room is put together correctly. I had a good Zoom with Greg this morning, but he was small and I was small. We were tiny, and I have to fix that. I also want to acknowledge the sunrise of the day, which I thought I'd be able to show you, but I'm afraid that still is a day away. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to bring it all together. Tomorrow, I'm not going to promise you, but I'm almost going to promise you we will have a phone number. We do have a studio line. That was very difficult. I mean, I could burn 20 minutes just talking about what it took to get that studio line for you, but we do have it. I'm not going to give it to you because I don't want you to call it. It's not quite functional, but it's darn close. So tomorrow we're going to have, hopefully we'll take your calls. That'll be exciting for me and you to talk and converse. I can't wait, Wyoming, to hear what you think about things. I know what I think, and I'm going to pronounce my opinion because I have a show. And when you have your own radio show, you can give an opinion. But you'll be able to share it with me on this new phone line. And hopefully we'll get it launched tomorrow. Also tomorrow, hopefully I'll work out the kinks of sharing a screen so I'll be able to show you with confidence that I'm not going to blow up a computer. The Shelley Daramides photo today of Thermopolis, the sunrise photo, beautiful. Oh, gorgeous. I love Thermopolis is in Hot Springs. Did you know Hot Springs in Wyoming is the oldest skewing county? I don't mean it's been around the longest. I mean the people, the demographics of Hot Springs, of which Thermopolis is the largest community, is, the last time I checked, according to the Census Bureau 2020, has the oldest. It's, Hot Springs County is kind of like Florida of Wyoming. It's where all the old folks go to retire, pretty much. Or it's like Wickenburg, Arizona, where all old cowboys go to winter. Hot Springs demographically skews as the eldest. Youngest population? Oh, come on, it's easy. Teton County, along with Fremont, because of probably Lander and Knowles and the influence of having some young, when you're young, you're in your 20s and you want to experience Wyoming, you're coming to Teton and Fremont pretty much. But just a little tidbit for you. We're on the subject of Thermopolis. Beautiful photo of today's sunrise. CowboyStateDaily.com. Hopefully you're checking that website all the time, and hopefully you subscribe to the newsletter. Please do. It helps us. It's kind of like a way to figure out our subscription so we can show advertisers we have this many people, this many eyeballs on us every day. And by the way, we are the most read news in the state of Wyoming. Jimmy's emailing me all the time, the numbers, but they're crazy. They're like, we do numbers. We got people on our stories. They read our stories. Thousands and tens of thousands of people. More people than live in the state of Wyoming. I have to sneeze. Maybe not. Yeah, because we have a lot of viewers and listeners and readers from outside the state. But yeah, the numbers, the analytics are fantastic. We want to grow them even more. So subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss anything. First thing you'll see in the newsletter to start off the day is the sunrise photo of the day. And today's is Shelley Daramidi from Thermop, and the photo's gorgeous. Maybe I'll try to share it, but I'm afraid I'll really wreak havoc on the whole setup. Yeah, better not. Let's get to top of the hour news. I want to just catch up with Wendy again and see if we're hitting all the main topics today. I want to talk about a couple of stories we missed the other day, including fine dining for Fido. Does your dog eat better than you? Gourmet shopping, full gourmet grocery stores and restaurants for dogs. Yeah, our Renee Jean had that story. And Trump's new line of watches can get up there in the $100,000 a watch. The reason that's a Wyoming story is because the gentleman who runs the company that sells the watches, called the Best Watches on Earth, that LLC is registered in Wyoming in Sheridan, which means nothing as far as saying this company is headquartered in Wyoming. It's just an LLC, and that's a whole topic right there. Your ability to pretend you do business in Wyoming in order to take advantage of the very friendly corporate tax rate, which I believe is 0. So, yeah, you want to be headquartered in Wyoming, selling Trump watches. Wendy's News is next. Let's check.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Thursday, October 3rd. From the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, I'm Wendy Core. A father whose son has been missing for 2 weeks after climbing Yellowstone National Park's highest peak is urging people not to give up on him. Brian King Henke, father of 22-year-old climber and Yellowstone-based concessionaire worker Austin King, told Cowboy State Daily's Clara McFarland that King called his parents and at least 2 friends from the peak on September 17th. That was the last time anybody heard from him.
He's known now that Yellowstone not only is transitioning from rescue to recovery mode, which implies death, but they're also scaling back their search efforts here in the 12th day. And so he knows these things, and he, pretty much what he has to say is just keep praying for my son.
King Henke said new leads have been reported, including footprints found by searchers and signs of an off-permit fire, a fire outside of designated camping spaces. It was another nervous night for people in rural Wyoming, with an uncontained wildfire making a run at another small community in Sheridan County near the Montana border. The Elk Fire, which blew up to about 20,000 acres overnight Sunday and threatened the town of Dayton, grew to about 32,000 acres by Tuesday evening. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the fire shifted with the winds overnight, taking aim at Parkman, a community of fewer than 500 people.
It didn't get close enough to actually prompt either of those places to evacuate. However, they were both put on kind of like standby notice.
There was no school Wednesday for students at Tongue River High School in Dayton or the Slack School in Parkman. Well, there hasn't been much talk about a constitutional amendment going before voters this November until recently. Constitutional Amendment A asks voters if they'd like to support creating a separate 4th class of taxation status for certain residential properties. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that the proposal to bring the amendment to the voters was passed by the legislature in 2023, but some who supported it then have changed their minds.
One of these people is House Majority Floor Leader Chip Nyman, who said it opens up too many possible consequences that could be negative for taxpayers if things go in a negative way for Wyoming economically. He pointed out that technically this could raise tax rates. It would allow lawmakers to raise tax rates in Wyoming sometime in the future, which could, potentially happen with a different legislature and a much worse economic picture, which very, very much concerns him.
If approved, the amendment would create a subclass of primary residences that could be assessed and taxed at a different rate than other properties in the state. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Wyoming, rugged, strong, and patriotic. Senator John Barrasso is fighting to protect it, enforce the border, stop the invasion, finish the wall. That's why he's endorsed by President Trump. John Barrasso will never stop fighting for Wyoming families. Cut the federal red tape, unleash the power of Wyoming energy.
God bless Wyoming, and God bless these great United States of America.
Paid for by High Plains PAC and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. HighPlainsPAC.com. High Plains PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, since 2020, the western Wyoming town of Alpine has seen its population balloon from about 900 to an estimated 1,300, and the proposed expansion of a gravel pit right on the edge of town is only adding to the community's growing pains. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that residents are worried that fine particle silica dust from a proposed 240-acre expansion of the Alpine Bear Pit gravel operation could pollute the air as well as water in the nearby Palisades Reservoir.
The gravel pit says it will have all kinds of benefits and will help improve the water flows into the Palisades Reservoir there. On the other side, you have some residents who really don't like the idea because they're not too keen on all the dust of the gravel pits.
Residents are also concerned that the gravel pit expansion could disrupt the local elk herd's migration route and disrupt recreation on the reservoir. And if anyone thought September was hotter and drier than it has been in decades, they're right. It has been in parts of Wyoming. But Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that the warm weather hasn't altered long-term forecasts for the Cowboy State, which say people should expect a colder than normal winter.
September temperatures were anywhere from 3 to 10 degrees above their historic averages, usually their 30-year averages, and precipitation was way down. So what does that mean? It means September was dry and warm, and in some cases record-breaking dry and warm.
Winter 2024-25 should have above average snowfall, but certain areas may be more impacted than others. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily.
Thank you, Wendy, for news. You heard her mention how hot and dry September was. I like that. I take a September that's warm and dry any day because September is kind of moving us into fall, and it's kind of a reminder that winter is right around the corner. No more so in Wyoming does September indicate winter is right around. You could just see winter peaking around the corner of September. I'm coming for you, old man winter. And I'll be here for 6 months. I'm like the in-laws you can't get rid of. Yeah, winter's going to be here soon enough. So I love that September, start to finish, can be as rock solid as that September was, and we had to say goodbye to it. But look at October, just carrying right on. We're on October 3rd already, and it's looking still like September. Highs in the 70s across the state, kind of a little bit cooler, though. You heard Don Day say yesterday when I talked with him in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll do it again today. I'm going to chat with him here real quick. And I want to, we talked a lot about fires and how weather, could factor into a wildfire, make it worse. And we talked yesterday about wind. Why wind? I said and that's what I love about Don Day. He doesn't need a lot of setup. You wind him up and he goes. He's just a great interview subject because he's so weather knowledgeable. I mean, the guy just eats, sleeps weather. And you just say, that was my question yesterday. What an easy interview, right? And like I had a whole bunch of notes. Here's the things I want to ask him about. And I started off with, Don, why wind? And off he went. We did 5 minutes like that on why it's windy in Wyoming, where it's windy, why is that so, where it's not windy, and why is that so, and what does it indicate? I mean, it's just everything about wind. So basically, if you didn't join us yesterday, it boiled down to the wind blows in Wyoming because Nebraska sucks. I'm just kidding. I love Nebraska. I really do. Nebraska's awesome. John Deere country, along with the Dakotas. There's nothing bad about Nebraska except trying to drive through it east to west or west to east. You're on I-80 for like a million years. And you just can't get through it. And you're praying, I hope I get to a Cabela's soon. I'm on I-80. Nebraska was built with autopilot in mind. What do they call the cars that drive by themselves? I forget the terminology. Everybody's kind of working on it, the autopilot car. No way would I ever drive one. Or no way would I ever get in one. Not happening. I don't even use cruise control for the most part. Every once in a while I will, but I don't like my vehicle making decisions for me. I really don't. Or my computer. When I have the choice to do automatic updates, nope. I want to know what you're doing, computer, at all times. I'm the boss of you. Although not very well, because this computer does whatever it wants. But AI, I'm scared to death of AI. ChatGPT, I won't use it. I don't want my computer overthinking things. I want to be in charge. I will tell you what to do. I'm the master, you're the slave. Same thing with the car. No way am I letting a robot drive it. And I don't even like cruise control. I want to be in complete command. But I got to admit, there are times traveling in Nebraska on a nice day with dry pavement, that cruise control seems mighty handy. And the autopilot might be a good idea. Yeah. So I made a note to talk to Don Day. I had an idea where I wanted to take it, but I guess knowing that one of the top stories today is September. What a beautiful September. Felt warm, felt comfortable, felt rain-free for the most part. But I know sometimes what the weather feels like isn't what the weather actually was. And you have to verify with a meteorologist and say, is it true that, and that's I guess that'll be my first question for Don. Is it true that September felt really warm and really dry? I don't remember it raining a lot. I didn't have to bring in the lawn chair cushions outside very often. And apparently it's true. Newcastle, you set records, I think. Newcastle was like average 71 degrees for the month of September, which would be a record, like destroyed the old record. And precip, almost immeasurable, like 0.33. I don't know. Don knows the numbers, but I know Newcastle was among one of the places in Wyoming that had a glorious September. And I don't see any sign of Don. And even if we got Don here, apparently my Zoom room is making everybody tiny, which I'm going to try to fix, but I'm reluctant to try to fix it live in the moment because it might be bad. Let's take a look at that story, and hopefully Don can flesh it out for us, bring some life to it. But the story is in the Cowboy State Daily News, and it concerns September being fantastic. And I'm going to go to it here. And again, by tomorrow, I think I'll be able to share these stories with you visually. Right now, you just see me reading the internet, which I'm sure is compelling. I'm sure that's great entertainment. September, hottest, driest in decades, but Wyoming can still expect a cold winter. And maybe because of that, who knows? There's another question for Don. Does a really hot, dry September mean necessarily that winter will be ferocious? We'll have to ask Don or Farmer's Almanac. But for whatever reason, Don said, yeah, winter going to be colder than normal. Ooh, could be a real winter. National Weather Service verifies this. Don Day will confirm, but temperatures were between 3 and 7 degrees warmer than average in September across the Cowboy State. Precip between 10% and 50% lower than average. Riverton may have seen the highlights of it as far as being hot and dry. Riverton, which typically is hot and dry all summer, averaged 5 degrees warmer in September and got only 0.08 inches of precipitation. That doesn't sound like a lot. Newcastle, you got less than half an inch of rain all September. Your average is over 1 inch. So Newcastle, you were dry and you were warm. Mean temperature for September, 62 degrees. Last month, historically, it was 70.5. That's a new record. Almost 71 degrees on average in Newcastle. Crazy. That's warm. Gillette, same thing. Your average precip is about 1.25 inches for the month of September, but you got less than 0.2 of an inch. Average temperature for Gillette last month was 85 degrees. 85. The average in Gillette for September was 85. That's 10 degrees warmer than the 30-year average recorded by Gillette. So, yeah, it's everywhere. Everybody was simmering and no relief in sight as far as precip. Good job by Andrew Rossi to pick up that story to get a feel for it. And that's where it starts. Wonder if we can get Andrew on. We don't take a wild stab in the dark and try to get him on here. We'll fire him off an email. You think Andrew's awake at 7:15 in the morning? Apparently, I'm thinking Don Day comes on at 7:10. I'm sorry. We agreed 7:20, so that's why Don's not with us. Sorry, Don. All right, I'm going to fire off an email to Andrew Rossi right now. And this may be the way some of the morning show goes, and I apologize, but I don't book guests in advance. Sometimes I will try to book guests in advance, and I will know when someone's coming on, and I'll be able to tell you, hey, watch for this. Coming up at 8:30, we're going to talk to the President of the United States, etc. But for now, it's catch as catch can, kind of, because this is all new to everybody. So you are watching me actually try to get one of this keyboard. I got one of those extended keyboards now with the new machine, and my fingers aren't used to it. And they go off key and they hit emojis. I don't use emojis. And you're probably not surprised at that. I don't use cruise control. I don't like AI. I don't like chat GTP, and I don't use my emojis. I'm a writer. Use your words. I'm not an emoji guy. So I wish I could disable that whole thing. But emojis have become the main communication source. They become so mainstream. I'll bet. And now I'm getting sidetracked. I'm supposed to be sending Andrew Rossi an email. Dang it. Zoom room, ? And then I'll put him a link to the Zoom room. So I'll bet emojis have become so ingrained as our everyday way to communicate. I would wager there's UC Berkeley. That's a college I could think of that has a class in emojis. They probably got rid of their English writing class. They probably used to have a class like appreciation for American literature or English writing. And they got rid of that, and they have a whole course now, 3 credits you get the semester in proper use of today's emojis. UC Berkeley. I'm speculating. Because have you seen the average college kid send a text? They can't spell. There's no grammar. Not that they're trying. Understand, today's text, you're supposed to be cool. You're supposed to be grammatically lazy. There's nobody uses, if you use a comma in a text, you're OG, man. Oh, there's nothing says boomer like using a comma or a period even or anything in a text. Come on, dinosaur. Yeah, you use grammar in a text and you're just screaming Bill Sniffin. That's a dead giveaway. But the emojis, I wouldn't be caught dead using an emoji. So, all right, I fired off a text to Andrew. Hopefully he can join us because I want to see how this story came into his brain. And the story is, he thought, and maybe this is how, Andrew, he thought, man, it was hot and dry September. All my azaleas died. I don't know if he's got azaleas going in the flower bed. I don't even know what an azalea is. But maybe he, somehow anecdotally, he noted that September felt really warm and dry. And he was always out there watering the azaleas. And he's like, that might be a story. I bet you I'm going to go contact weather people. And he got a hold of the National Weather Service. And indeed, Andrew Rossi found out, confirmed what many of us felt here in the Cowboy State. You, me, across the state. We said, woo, that September was a scorcher. Andrew Rossi thought so. And NWS, National Weather Service, confirmed for him in a story that's in today's Cowboy State Daily that indeed September was hot and dry. And Andrew didn't stop there like a good journalist. He speculated on what that might mean for winter. Don't stop with what happened in the past. Let's also look ahead. What does that mean for winter, Andrew thinks? And what it means, according to Andrew and the National Weather Service, is we're going to have a winter. And I don't know how they ascertain that. And that might be something for Don Day to figure out. But, yeah, he's with us. We're at 7:20, so it's time for the day weather forecast. And we meet live with Don Day, joining us in the Zoom room, which is small. So I'll have to prepare Don for that. Don, our Zoom room is having difficulties today. But I'm trying. There you are. There you are. And you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's good. So we can't see me I've gone from having our Zoom room participants be real tiny to now only you show up, which is fine with me. I'm more than happy to not be part of the picture. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to start off with this news story. Then maybe you read it, and maybe you're a Cowboy State Daily reader. Andrew Rossi got in contact with the NWS, and they confirmed September was hot and dry across the state. Felt like it. Is that a fact?
Oh, yeah. It was one of the warmest Septembers on record in parts of the Western High Plains and Rockies. I mean, it started off pretty average, but as we all know, it has been a very warm, very dry fall, and I'm not surprised to see the numbers come out as they did, and certainly starting October off the same way.
Yeah, and can you read anything into that as far as like what we think winter will be? Or that's a whole separate thing? So when you're hot and dry, you can't?
You can.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, actually, I could probably make a pretty convincing argument by going in years past that a warm, dry fall could end up meaning a much colder, harsher winter. But you got to be really careful with those things. You can't go too high. You can't go too low. I always tell people this because I get this all the time. I've never seen anything like this. This is, the blah, blah, blah. This is so unprecedented. It's like, well, I can go back and I can find other falls and other seasons. Now, certainly this one was one of the warmest when you compare on the 30-year averages. So this definitely was I would call it, on the higher end of the drier and warmer. But you kind of have to not get too high or too low with any weather pattern. And the reason I say that is that the way the weather works is it always evens itself out. If you look at the weather at any time across the globe, you always are going to find extremes. You're going to find places that are really cold, places really hot, places really dry, places that are, really wet. A great example, September, super dry here and warm in the western half of the nation. What is it on the other side of the nation? What happened in North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia and Florida? Excessive amounts of rain. But what we like to do as humans, we like to crunch the numbers and say, you know what, if we average everything out, well, this is what it should be because this is the average over time. But weather is far from average. Weather averages are the average of extremes. But we want to... People think, humans think on a linear fashion like we do with time.
Yeah. And we also tend to remember the extremes. So, if it's extremely hot, we have this feel like that was the hottest month on record. And you're like, well, let's look at the averages. Not really. Or it was a half a degree warm. You sound just like Jim Woodman's the meteorologist that I talked to for years. He would say the same thing about the same stuff. And he also, and this will be my one last question posed to you before we just quickly look at the statewide weather. He also would say meteorologists tend to, especially in ski towns, underestimate coming snow totals as when we think about winter. So they say that storm on the forecast for this weekend, expect 2 to 4 inches when they know it could be 8. But you don't want to overpromise because we'll all be mad if you promise us 8 and we get 2 and you underdeliver. So I don't know. Is there anything in your forecasting that you think about? People expect.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of weather forecasting is actually communication and effectively communicating things. And a lot of times weather forecasters are their own worst enemy because people really want specifics. The first word out of the mouth of anybody, when you say it's going to snow this weekend, what is their first question? How much? Okay. And so I had a professor at the University of Wyoming who gave me sage advice, and I still use it to this day, which says, if you're going to forecast a foot of snow, don't forecast it until half of it is already on the ground. Okay, which was the point, because once you give somebody, I learned this the hard way. Once you give somebody a number, the first number they hear is the expectation. And so social media to me has been a really thorn in my side because you get people that say, look, I looked at this computer model on the internet and they post on Facebook, Cheyenne could get 30 inches of snow this Saturday. And so what does that do? That sets people's perceptions. And he's like, well, that's nuts, but it doesn't matter. Things go out there. So yeah, you have to control the messaging. If you let it get out of control, then you end up being the one getting blamed. And so you got to be careful.
And it flips both ways because you've heard the old adage, somebody could email you, hey, Don, I was shoveling 14 inches of your partly sunny forecast today. So what the heck?
That one.
Today's a yo-yo. You mentioned the yo-yo thing with the temperatures all week. Today's the down day for the yo-yo. A little bit cooler. What's going on statewide?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be cool across the state today. Most areas will just stay in the 60s, which is about where we should be, average temperature-wise. But we're going to go right back up again. And a couple of things to point out is with the warmer weather coming back Friday and Saturday, I'm afraid to say it gets windy again. We're going to have a respite in the winds today and tomorrow, but Friday and Saturday are really critical days because it's going to get warm. And it's going to be windy where we've got the 2 major fires. And so as we have been discussing it, a week from today, Jake, we're not going to have really not a lot to talk about until maybe some changes by next weekend, but that's it. So these are real critical. I think tomorrow and Saturday are critical days for Wyoming to get through.
Yeah. As far as the fires, it is Groundhog Day with the forecast, really. Kind of, you can knock off early, go play a round of golf, I guess, Don, because it's push button with the weather. Not a lot of changes for the next 8 days, looks like. But, yeah, thank you, Don. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.
Great insight, great stuff. That's Don Day, weather forecast. Day weather forecast. He is Wyoming's meteorologist. It's where we all go to find out the weather, even when it's weather we don't like, even if it's too snowy or too hot and you want to complain to the weather guy. Don's just going to tell it like it is and what it is. And what it is today, a little bit down, a little bit cooler, feels like fall today, goes right in with the colors. I'll look at the statewide map here and give you an idea of what weather is doing across the state. But as far as temperatures at this moment, and again, I'm not going to try to share my screen because I'm super nervous about that. But Yeah, weather-wise, let's see. Wheatland, you're 42 degrees right now, 36 in Casper. Sheridan, up there near that elk fire, you're 37 to start today. So that's the good news about these wildfires. Wildfires trying to burn in Wyoming in October typically will have a tough time keeping their energy going if you're a wildfire, because at night it really sets down. You got overnight lows in the 30s. Wildfires really behave better at night. But then, the warm up and the wind, and you're right back to trouble. 41 degrees in Powell right now. Rock Springs, you're 42. Cheyenne, 43. So similar temps around the state as we make our way towards primarily mid-60s today for a high. And then getting warmer again tomorrow. I'm feeling like another Indian summer day as we head into finally Friday, the end of the week. 7:30. I've not, have I heard from Andrew to see if he can join us on that? Oh, yeah. Andrew says, sure. When do you want me? We want you right now, Andrew. Get your fanny in here. Let me tell him. Right now. Should I use an emoji? No. Let's see if we can corral Andrew Rossi. That'd be really cool, even though my Zoom room is freaking out right now and it's not acting right. Now I messed everything up. I'm going to get Andrew Rossi. I'm still trying to figure out how to work my whole business here. Okay. I think we'll get Andrew in a second here when he joins up. But, Andrew's story was how did he find out that September was so warm and dry? And particularly, how he thought to and what was his methodology of figuring out that also the news that we were hot and dry September, that's old news. September, we knew that. It felt hot, felt dry. I didn't use my wipers all month. I know September was dry. But what does that mean for winter? Andrew says winter's going to be colder than usual. Snow? Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll be super snowy. Places like Jackson Hole with 3 area ski resorts, they're hoping for tons of snow. But what else did Rossi have news-wise? Because when we get Andrew, we're going to talk weather September. I really want to talk to Mark because he's got the cool Tex McBride story. What about the Colorado man that, speaking of shoveling, some people use their shovel to shovel snow. Some use it to beat down a cougar, mountain lion. That's a Mark Hines story. I'd love to chat with Mark about where he dug that story up. And I really need to know more from Leo because I don't understand the state pharmacy board and what's going on there. It's just so political. I can't get my arms around that. Claire had the update about the missing hiker in Yellowstone. Remember Austin King? He went out to climb a mountain, went out to climb the tallest peak in Yellowstone National Park. We know he succeeded in climbing the peak because I believe he texted from the top, texted his dad or texted family and said, I'm at the top of this mountain peak. And then has not been seen since or heard from since. And that's how many days now? 22-year-old Brian King Henke, the father, said, just keep praying for my son, Austin. The 22-year-old hiker who's been missing since mid-September. It was like 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. They've been searching for him pretty hard. And it's just, mind-boggling that even for me, I know how wild Wyoming can be and what large areas you have to cover. And our own Leo Wolfson, by the way, is an avid mountain climber, hiker. He gets out there and he's actually climbed the peak in question. What is that peak? Eagle Peak. Elevation 11,361. It's not a technical climb. You can scramble up it. You got to get on all fours at a certain point, and there's some loose, crumbly rock. So that's usually, the first thing you think of when somebody is climbing a mountain is they fell off. And Leo said there are sections of it where, yes, you could fall because it's loose stuff, but it's not the kind of mountain that you think of when you're mountain climbing and you fall and you fall to your death. It's more of a scramble. It's more likely that something happened on the way back. Obviously, he got there okay. It was getting down and then getting back to his vehicle or getting back to where he began the hike. And a lot of things can happen. Obviously, you can get lost, number one, but hopefully with the 2-week search, if he's lost, you'd find him. You can encounter wildlife. That's one of the biggest likelihoods is you run into a grizzly bear. This area of Yellowstone, you got a lot of animals in it. Grizzly bear, and we just talked earlier this morning about how grizz this time of year putting on weight and in a feeding frenzy, and they're not willing to share dinner or food with anybody. And if they encounter humans, it could be a conflict. You've had cold overnight lows up there in Yellowstone. The likelihood that someone is still alive after 2 weeks, not impossible. We've seen it happen. There's a great old story about Truman Everts. If you get a chance to look this guy up, there's stories been written about him. There's a book been written about Truman Everts. He was part of one of the early expeditions of Yellowstone before Yellowstone was named a national park, the nation's first national park. There were several expeditions that went on. Truman Everts was a part of this expedition and got lost. I believe he was thrown from his horse. And when he fell, he broke his glasses and he was near blind, like he was Coke bottle glasses kind of guy. So without his glasses, Truman Everts couldn't see a lick. And he survived, I want to say, for a month. I think it was 30-something days. Should I look it up to make sure? I don't want to give you fake news. I want to always fact check myself. Well, not always. Sometimes I do want to tell you. Sometimes I don't mind sharing something. Truman C. Everts. So yeah, as soon as you type him up, you find out Lost in Yellowstone, The Misadventures of Truman Everts. Truman Everts, I didn't know this. He got lost 2 times and started a forest fire. This is 1870, by the way. There were times I remember reading the Truman Everts book where he was crawling on his hands and knees because he couldn't see very well. And he was eating bugs. I mean, this guy, I'm thinking it was a month that they found him. Maybe more. He was part of the Washburn-Langford Doan expedition, 54 years old at the time. And when he finally was found, he had to walk himself out of there. 37 days. Okay. Yep. His main staple was root of a thistle, commonly known today as Everts thistle or elk thistle. This sustained him as he walked, crawled, struggled his way from Yellowstone Lake down the Yellowstone River, and was finally found in mid-October by a couple of guys who were out looking for him. Still, a month later, he was wounded by a bear Or they thought he was wounded by a bear, sorry. But 37 days Truman Everts survived being lost in Yellowstone and eventually emerged. So hopefully that gives hope to Brian King, father of the lost hiker Austin King. It is not impossible to survive in the wild that long. It's tough in Yellowstone because of the cold overnight lows. So depending on how well equipped he was, what kind of clothes he had, certainly doable. But it's a bear encounter I'm particularly worried about. Anyway, the story from Claire and the reason it's in the news and should continue to be in the news until we get some resolution is search crews finally have decided to scale back the search. They're now in recovery mode. Previously there were people in boats along the shoreline, helicopters, drones, searchers, dogs, the whole bit. I mean, they know how to search for people in Yellowstone and Grand Teton and other national parks. Our forest people, our forest rangers, we're pretty good at searching people. There's a lot of ground to cover. You have no idea. If you live in Cleveland, maybe you have no notion of what it's like to find a person. Like, how hard can it be to find a person? Well, in 2.3 million acres of Yellowstone, it's very difficult. Even when you're flying drones and flying airships, you got heavy timber, heavy cover, even search teams, the amount of ground you have to cover and the ruggedness of that ground, it makes searching very, very difficult. And some people are never found, including Kian. I want to dig into an old story that happened in Grand Teton National Park going back to June 8th, 2021. A hiker named Kian McLaughlin went hiking in Grand Teton, which is not as big as Yellowstone, but still has some remote areas. That was truly even more baffling. Kian McLaughlin was hiking on a pretty popular trail in Grand Teton. Like, would encounter other people and say hi, and never came back. He's a kid from Ireland. So they looked for him for a good month. Didn't turn up anything. In fact, the only thing they turned up was a woman named Heather McCoskey, 40-year-old Utah resident, said she was hiking and she saw him. She said, there was posters of Kian McLaughlin. I'm not talking about Austin King now. I'm going back to 2021. And this hiker named Kian McLaughlin from Ireland. And this woman, Heather, came forward after a couple of weeks of searching and said, I remember seeing him. He walked by me at Delta Lake or one of the popular trails. I saw him. He was wearing what he was wearing in the posters, missing posters, and yeah. Turns out she gave false information. They figured out later, and she admitted she gave a false account of Kian McLaughlin. I don't remember why she did this or what was going on, but she got in big trouble. She's been banned from the park for like 8 years or something. Grand Teton National Park Service said, don't come back. Giving false info. But they've never found Kian McLaughlin. 2021. It's now 3 years later, more than 3 years later. So hopefully, we don't go that route with Austin King, but the search has gone from a search mission missing to a recovery, meaning basically they're scaling back the whole operation and hope to one day come across Austin King and hope to come across him alive. But with every passing day, that chance getting smaller, that window getting tighter. Claire McFarland has the story. Cowboy State Daily, the search for the missing Yellowstone hiker Austin King scaled back by authorities, admitting that, at least right now, they just can't find him. I want to put on my judge wig, and we're going to court. Yes, we'll do it right after. That's weird. The music just stopped, but I should be expecting weird all morning because it's been that kind of way. Andrew, we see you. You look great. You're kind of off to the side, but I'm having Zoom room problems. How you doing?
Oh, I can't complain. How are you this morning?
Hey, I'm super good. Just trying to figure out a new computer. You probably, when's the last time you got like a brand new laptop or something?
It's been a couple months since I got my latest laptop, and I'm still figuring out some of the quirks,
right?
Especially since it's different systems. I went from a HP to a Mac, and I had a Mac before, but it's not like riding a bike. I have to relearn everything.
Oh, well, I feel for you because, yeah, I just went from Mac to Mac. A 10-year jump in how old the age was between them. And maybe 3 operating systems later, and there's just all kinds of stuff that's changed, and it's bizarre.
Well, at the rate things change, that might as well be transitioning from the Wright brothers glider to a current Boeing plane.
Definitely. Or for the cars that you had to get out front and crank them to start to now.
Exactly.
Now you don't even put a key in them. You just push a button, or you just suggest that they say, Siri, start my car and warm it up while I'm in the shower. Yeah, and I'm still, I was out there with the crank. I know. Well, first world problems. Nobody wants to hear about that. I'm interested in your story, September, because, I felt it too. And I was speculating, putting words in your mouth if you didn't join us earlier, that you probably got onto this story just by being a regular guy and saying, man, that was hot September. You want to disclose where you live in Wyoming and why you felt maybe it was warm, and how'd the whole story come about?
Oh, I definitely felt it was warm. I'm one of those poor saps that doesn't have air conditioning, so I've been feeling it for months. But yeah, I live in Cody, so I'm just an hour away from the east entrance of Yellowstone National Park. So I'm high enough that maybe it wasn't as hot as it was in some other places, but I'm low enough that it wasn't as cool as it typically can get in Yellowstone. So it's been a hot summer up here in Cody, and it's not even like it's not an enjoyable heat. It's just persistent. It's just been sticking around for a really long time.
I liked it. Yeah, and I bet if we poll everybody across the state, people in Basin would say, we need relief already. It's one of the hottest spots in Wyoming. And then people in, Yellowstone, West Yellowstone would be like, oh, I don't know. That was really nice September. I love that we can extend September in the way it was, but it did feel warm, and it felt like it never rained. And so you some light bulb went on, and where do you even go to start to figure that out?
Yeah, well, the fun thing is I have the enjoyment of being able to talk with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day on a weekly basis, if not more so. So by this time, we talk so often about what's happening with Wyoming weather that I start to recognize the patterns, at least the patterns in what we've talked about. So when I see something happening in the weather, that's usually rings a bell with, oh, that sounds like something that Don and I have discussed before. And one of the things that we've discussed at length is how he was anticipating September was going to be warmer and drier than it might be otherwise. And that's what got borne out. But we were talking about that back in August and even a little bit in July as we were looking into what the long range forecast was going to be. So September went according to plan. Whether people like that plan or not, that's their personal opinion, but there's nothing surprising about it.
I did not know. Maybe I didn't read enough, which means I'm probably like your typical reader. I didn't get to the part where you kind of knew it was coming. Is that in the story where you had a heads up? Don said, watch out, September is going to be warm and dry.
Yeah, it was pretty much there. I mean, Don does his long range forecasts as close to the range he's predicting as possible because he doesn't like to go too far out. So he was preparing to get his long range forecast ready at around August or so. And so we talked as soon as it was ready. And one of the first things he said was, before we get a colder, snowier winter, which he's still anticipating, it's going to be a warmer, drier fall. And that would extend through September and into the first weeks of October. That's just what the weather patterns were suggesting was going to happen. And then, well, the facts are bearing that out. I mean, we saw some areas, especially northeastern Wyoming, reach new record highs for average temperatures throughout the month. And don't know about record lows in terms of precipitation, but they were only getting small fractions of what their monthly precipitation usually would be.
Yeah, and that part of your story we did dive into a little bit. Newcastle, you broke records with your warmness. Gillette as well. And yeah, some of the precip places you can expect 1.25 inches over September got like 0.0 numbers that started with zeros after the decimal. Yeah, it was warm. It was dry. You confirm that. And then you went that step further that good reporters do. What does it mean for a winter? We all thinking about winter right now. What does that mean for the future? Because we want meteorologists to tell us what's going on next month, not last month. We already know that. So yeah, you thought, like, does this mean winter's going to be real warm and mild or real cold, or is there no correlation?
Well, one of Don's oft-stated sayings about Wyoming weather, and he doesn't mean this in a derogatory or, mean-spirited way, it's just that people have such a short memory when it comes to what the weather is. It's basically, it might be what it was at this time last year, but not much further than that. But there are historical patterns that he can see with the patterns that he knows to look for and recognize. So what we saw this September is the same thing that we saw in September 2020 and then again in 2012. So we have a precedent for these really hot, really dry Septembers. Now, granted, we are breaking records this September, but that doesn't mean that it's too far out of normal patterns for what Wyoming would expect. So in terms of winter, what we're experiencing right now is just a totally separate thing from the patterns that we're going to be seeing coming in. So Don's words, as we've discussed it, is that it's going to be colder across the state and it's going to be snowier, but it's not going to be universally snowier. So while all of Wyoming might be colder than average, some parts will be snowier than average and get more snow than others. And it's going to, from what I remember him saying, is going to disproportionately probably favor the northern half of Wyoming as opposed to the southern half, which is the opposite of what we had last winter, where we had a good amount of snow, but southern Wyoming got a lot more than northern Wyoming did. So that's good news amongst what's going down.
It was weird. You're right. Last year, Evanston got more snow than I knew what to do with. That southern corridor, I-80 was miserable. And then up north where we want to go skiing it, we're like, where is it? Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we flip it this year and get a real winter, especially for the top half of the state. But I'm glad you did that story because that is exactly what I'm saying. We're 3 days into October, and I'm thinking this weather, it's extended into October, but I was remembering September in my short weather memory, as Dante says. I'm like, man, that was a hot September and dry, and I still got the garden hose out, and it's October 3rd.
Yep. Well, now you and everyone else can feel somewhat vindicated. Yeah. That it felt hot, and the numbers say, yeah, it was hot. It was really hot in September.
Love it. Love it. Love it that you're on it, Andrew. Dig into another story. Can't wait to talk to you again about whatever you're going to write. We're watching for that byline tomorrow. Cowboy State Daily, Andrew Rossi. What's he's got cooking? Don't tell us because I want it to be a surprise.
All righty. I'll keep you informed.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Have a good morning.
You too.
Andrew Rossi, yeah, that's cool. So, yeah, we were thinking with our short weather memory, September was hot and dry, and Andrew Rossi goes out and confirms such. Judge Jake, going to be my new segment, kind of like Judge Judy, only compared to me, Judge Judy was a softie. I am going to rule with an iron fist and an oak gavel. And I will launch thunderbolts down from upon my throne. Is that what the judge sits on? Is he on the throne? I don't know. Probably not. But I'm going to be up on a throne. And I am going to decide on certain cases that we have. And remember, these are my opinions, not the opinions of our Cowboy State Daily writers, our reporters. There are journalists that know to tell a story neutrally down the middle. They don't take opinions. They just present the stories as they are. So when we talk about crimes in court, and I can tell you now, you cannot nudge Claire McFarland off her reporter persona. You just won't ever catch her. And I tried yesterday, and I got in trouble for doing that, actually, to ask Claire questions that would make her form an opinion. Claire McFarland does not have an opinion when she writes about courts and crime. She just writes the facts. Here's what this dude is charged with doing or investigated with doing. Here's what the police say he did, and here's what possibly could happen. Me, I'm going to read that story, and I'm going to pronounce judgment. We're going to go right to court. Judge Jake will decide your fate. And we're going to do it with Claire's story concerning this Cody couple. They got caught trafficking fentanyl pills and meth, and they had some pot, the whole bit. And I have little tolerance for drugs. And I think people are... I have to experience. Here's another thing that changed. I should have never done all this. That was stupid. I had my studio kind of where I liked it yesterday, and I got the new computer. I should have waited for the weekend to set that up. And then when I installed everything, I switched everything, and I got it all backwards now. Now my mixer's over here. This button's over there. And I really am struggling to get through the morning. Well, I know you don't want to hear, but I'm trying. I want to try to get Jay on because we want to talk about the pumpkin drop as well. Andrew knows about the pumpkin. Well, we should have asked Andrew about the pumpkin. Andrew knows. And our own Riley Strand, our videographer, who, if you've seen his work, I'm sure you have, he's really good at video editing, camera work. Like, he's our video guy. And he's going to go capture, or has already captured, this pumpkin drop in Wheatland. I should get my facts together. But I think Andrew and Riley are going to cover the pumpkin drop, and we're going to talk to the mastermind who thought it all up. What a crazy notion to drop pumpkins. Yeah, it's Jay Richard. And I did send him a text, But, not everybody's up at 6:15 a.m. when I texted Jay. And I also don't know if my text went through because I'm on Wi-Fi calling. That's a whole nother issue. I'm not sure the text went through. My morning visit from Sammy. Don't get on camera, Sammy. You're not allowed, but she's here and she's cold. Where's your jacket? These kids. Nobody wears a coat. It's chilly this morning. We told you the temps, and we're heading, today's a little yo-yo. It's going to be coolish, cooler, 60s across the state for the most part, and then we're going to get warmer tomorrow. Anyway, Jay Richard, we're looking for you. If you're watching, tuning in, we need you. We want to know why and how and what was going on in your mind to think to drop a pumpkin on this, and they decide what to drop it on. And this is a big pumpkin, like huge. And they're going to drop it on a car or a truck or something. See, I don't know. And I got to get with it. Here's the story. This year's giant, and by the way, this is Cowboy State. I should know more about it because this is kind of our thing. Oh, they're going to drop it on an RV, or they already did drop it on an RV. I got to find out more about this. And I'm going to research this. I'm going to try to find Jay and learn more about it because Cowboy State Daily is invested in this pumpkin drop. We love it. And we're all about it. We're covering it. We're going to have video. We've already had the story. We're going to take you right to Wheatland and drop a pumpkin on something. Hopefully you can drop it on my old iMac. But first, let's check out Wendy's morning news. Let's do that right now.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you stories from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom for Thursday, October 3rd. Cheyenne's City Drug has been accused of illegally compounding and dispensing medications, and a previous Wyoming State Board of Pharmacy meeting that did not allow public comment on the issue became highly contentious. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that at a meeting early Wednesday morning, even 9 state legislators did nothing to persuade the board to allow the public to comment on its decision to suspend the license of the popular Cheyenne Pharmacy.
An attorney for the board explained that because the investigation and disciplinary action into City Drug is still ongoing, they could not allow public comment on the matter.
By a 5-1 vote Wednesday, the board approved a settlement agreement allowing City Drug to continue filling prescriptions while serving a 3-year stayed suspension. A Colorado man who killed a mountain lion with a shovel probably saved his dog from being devoured by the big cat. Outdoors reporter Mark Hines spoke with an experienced Wyoming mountain lion hunter who said mountain lions will kill and eat dogs if they get a chance.
A man reported that on September the 25th, he was in a campground at night and a mountain lion approached him and his dog. I think he said within about 10 yards of the dog, and the cat just started to become incredibly aggressive. So he grabbed a shovel and killed it. My source from Wyoming basically said mountain lions can and do view pet dogs as prey.
Had the big cat succeeded in its apparent goal, it wouldn't have been the first time that mountain lions took a toll on Colorado dogs. Residents around a small community in rural Boulder County said they lost 23 dogs to mountain lions in 2022. And police say they've caught 2 people trafficking bulk amounts of fentanyl and meth from Aurora, Colorado into Park County. 35-year-old Corinne McKay and 58-year-old Wayne Wright each face up to 80 years in prison and $100,000 in fines if convicted on 4 felony drug charges apiece. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that agents used various investigative techniques to apprehend the pair.
They tracked them to Aurora, and then they watched them come back through just outside Meeteetse, and they pull them over. And the document alleges that the woman just was stuffing something under the seat as the deputy walked up, and it turned out to be allegedly 2,000 fentanyl pills with another 5,000 in the trunk and a pound of methamphetamine and a little marijuana from a dispenser.
They both have a preliminary hearing set for Thursday morning, at which time the Cody Circuit Court judge will decide whether the state has probable cause to keep prosecuting them. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Wyoming, rugged, strong, and patriotic. Senator John Barrasso is fighting to protect it, enforce the border, stop the invasion, finish the wall. That's why he's endorsed by President Trump. John Barrasso will never stop fighting for Wyoming families. Cut the federal red tape, unleash the power of Wyoming energy.
God bless Wyoming and God bless these great United States of America.
Paid for by High Plains PAC and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. HighPlainsPAC.com. High Plains PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The Elk Fire blew up to about 20,000 acres overnight Sunday and threatened the town of Dayton, but it had grown to about 32,000 acres by Tuesday evening. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the fire shifted with the winds overnight, taking aim at Parkman, a community of fewer than 500 people.
It didn't get close enough to actually prompt either of those places to evacuate. However, they were both put on kind of like standby notice.
There was no school Wednesday for students at Tongue River High School in Dayton or the Slack School in Parkman. And Alaska's North Slope is isolated, prone to brutal weather, and home to gigantic, fearsome polar bears. And welder Tex McBride of Gillette absolutely loves working there. He told Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines that even though he knows how to be bear-aware from living in Wyoming, polar bears in the Arctic Circle take being bear-aware to a whole new level.
There was a gentleman who's from Gillette, saw the story about the Wapiti school we did and their grizzly resistant fence. And he said, oh boy, that's nothing, guys. He welds in oil fields up on Alaska's North Slope. And they have polar bear proof fences up there because they've got polar bears, which are on a whole other level. They're like the ultimate bear. And so they have really these like heavy duty steel cage like structures they have to walk through when they leave their man camp, and they look around, make sure there aren't any bears, and then they go outside.
Polar bears aren't the only apex predators lumbering about the North Slope. McBride said last year a worker had to scramble on top of a truck to escape an irritated grizzly. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on CowboyStateDaily.com. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.
Thank you, Wendy. Our managing editor, Greg Johnson, informs me that judges sit on a bench. I knew that. Not a throne. I'm going to sit on a throne. But regular judges, your common judge sits on a bench. I am above that. I mean, there's district judge, Supreme Court judge, Judge Jake. And I'm on the throne. And I'm going to talk about the case that I'm going to preside on, they say. There's a judge terminology for you. First, let me take you to Wheatland, Wyoming. A crowd is gathered. That sounds like a crowd in a meeting space. That doesn't sound like they're outdoors. There's a large crowd gathered in Wheatland, Wyoming. It's October 5th. Not Wheatland, Worland. Dang it. Worland, Wyoming. I've been to Worland. By the way, here's a story about Worland. The first time I was ever in Worland, I had lived in Wyoming for a few years, and I decided to go on a trip around the Bighorn Basin, like basically skirting sugar beet country. Like this was going to be, I'm going to circumvent, I'm going to circumcise the Bighorn Basin and sugar beet country. And when I stopped in Worland, it just so happened to be, let me just say, there were girls everywhere. I pull into Worland, and there's teenage girls everywhere. A pack of 10 teenage girls walking down the street. Another 20 coming out of this restaurant. Here's another 8 of them walking that, like just teenage girls all over the place. I'm like, what kind of town is Worland, and what kind of teenage boy dreamed this town up? Like your average 17-year-old boy who's all hopped up on his own testosterone, Worland would be his dream town. He'd be like, oh, I've died and gone to Worland. There's girls, girls, girls everywhere. Motley Crue. I should play some of that, but I don't have any of my music because I got rid of it with this new computer. And I'm not allowed to play music. Girls. Worland. And I found out it was a big major softball tournament, and all the high school softball teams were there, all these girls. So that accounted for Worland being full of girls. But Worland's full of pumpkins this time of year, and coming up on October 5th, which is what, Saturday? And so maybe we can talk to Jay Richards tomorrow because he's not answering me. And also, I'm not sure he got my text, so I don't want to blame it on Jay. But Jay's had this great idea for years to drop a pumpkin, do a pumpkin drop. They lift this thing up, I guess, in a crane. They drop it on various objects every year. One year they dropped it on an RV, just destroyed it. I mean, because this is not the pumpkin you leave out on the doorstep. These pumpkins are massive, 1,000-pound pumpkins. 200 feet in the air. And when they fall on something, they explode. They dropped them on cars, trucks, RVs, pianos. I love what they did during COVID. They dropped it on a giant representation of a COVID germ that had scrawled on it, "Made in China." Take that, Wuhan. Where did the COVID come from? Wuhan, right? The Wuhan flu? Now, I got to look that up now. And we're not going to get in the whole thing of who we're going to blame COVID on, but you can run the gamut of what you think about COVID. Is it just a viral flu? Was it germ warfare launched intentionally by the CCP or by the China whatever army? Did they cook it up in a lab? Did it really come from the Chinese inclination to eat live animals? I don't know. But it came from Wuhan? I'm trying to find it now. Anyway, wherever you sit on the whole COVID thing, we all had enough of it, right? We were all told to stay home. Don't do anything. Businesses got shut down. We're still living in post-COVID world where you can't order anything. You can't get parts for your car, for instance, or you can't, because we all stopped work. That's what happens when you stop working for 2 years. For 2 years, everybody quit working. Stock in Zoom exploded because we all Zoomed it in. Talk about mailing it in. We all got lazy. School kids didn't go to school. They Zoomed it in. Business executives didn't put on pants because they Zoomed it in. We all just put on a shirt and tie and it sat around in our underwear and Zoomed it in. For 2 years, we didn't do it. We didn't make anything. I say we. U.S. doesn't make anything anyway. Taiwan stopped making stuff because that's where stuff is made. We all just halted for 2 years. COVID sucked. The whole pandemic. And so, yeah, in Worland, they said COVID sucks. We're going to drop a pumpkin on it. Smart. Genius. And so that's why we got to talk to Jay Richards, who had this whole idea that every year in Worland, they should find the biggest pumpkin they could find, 1,000 pounds or more, and drop that sucker on a truck, an RV, a COVID germ. This year, they're going to drop it on Wile E. Coyote, a figurine. It's an 8-foot figurine of Wile E. Coyote. If this poor coyote hasn't had enough happen in his life chasing that roadrunner, poor guy, he runs into a tunnel. He paints a fake tunnel on a cliffside, and the bird runs through it like it's a tunnel. What? And Wiley runs into the rock, which it was and is. You know what I mean. And Wiley's always falling off a cliff, disappearing in the dust when he lands. So they're going to further torture poor Wile E. Coyote and drop a pumpkin on him this Saturday in Worland. So if you have time to get to Worland, hurry up. get there. I can't promise you you're going to see a lot of teenage girls, but you will see a pumpkin fall on Wile E. Coyote. Story coming from the pen of Andrew Rossi, who we just talked to. And the whole event is going to be covered by our own Riley Strand, who's going to make sure he gets this on video. And Riley, I hope you got that super slow-mo. I hope you can do that with your camera. The cat is crying outside. Should I let it in? All right, I'm going to let the cat in. Here's some compelling radio for you. Jake is going to leave the screen and go let this feral neighborhood cat inside because he's squawking. Stand by. Come on. All right. Wasn't that exciting? The cat is now safely indoors, and 2 seconds from now, he's going to be crying to get back out. Jay Richard, known as Wyoming's Pumpkin King. And I sent him a text. Hopefully we can talk to him tomorrow, Friday, day before the pumpkin drop in Worland. If you have time to get there, get there. Because it'll be something not to be missed. But we'll be there. Cowboy State Daily will be there. We'll have a camera pointed at the whole deal. And we'll let you know what you missed. We'll show you what you missed as they do the big pumpkin drop in Worland this Saturday. Jay Richard thought it up, and poor Wile E. Coyote going to get destroyed. I'm gonna sit on my throne on the bench, and we're going to talk about this story. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah. Cody Pear, you probably read this if you subscribe to our newsletter, cowboystatedaily.com. Visit the website. This story, one of the lead stories today. Cody Pear accused of trafficking 7,000 fentanyl pills, meth, from Aurora, Colorado. Drugs are practically legal in the Front Range, pretty much. Supposedly in Colorado, and I don't get to Colorado too often. I used to work down there. I used to work on a ranch in Craig, Colorado, Fraser, Estes Park, Longmont, Loveland. I've been all around Colorado. And the hippies are fast displacing the ranchers. I'll tell you that. They've gone full hippie in the Front Range. From Boulder to Denver and beyond, they are full out hippie. And they're just smoking pot every day because it's legal. And I don't know, I'm supposedly doing a lot of drugs. Again, the opinions of Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake are his opinions and not those of Cowboy State Daily news coverage. But my impression of Colorado last time I was there is it's been overtaken by hippies smoking pot all day. That's fine. To each your own. Do your thing. You get hacky sack all day long and enjoy your reefers. But don't bring it into Wyoming. You bring your drugs to Wyoming, that's when we have a problem. And Judge Jake going to have to sit on the throne. Corinne McKay and Wayne Wright of Cody face up to 80 years in prison for allegedly, and I say that word in all caps, allegedly, and this has to, you're innocent till proven guilty, unless you come before Judge Jake, allegedly bringing 7,000 fentanyl pills and meth into Wyoming, accused of trafficking drugs from Aurora, Colorado into Wyoming. That's where we have the problem, in my opinion. Keep the drugs, do the drugs, get all wacko, but as soon as you try to score money for your drugs by robbing people, and as soon as you try selling your drugs in the state of Wyoming, We got to come down on you hard. I am. Cody Circuit Judge Stephen Joseph Dara will decide on whether the state has probable cause to prosecute 58-year-old Wayne Wright and 35-year-old Corinne McKay. You know, too often when you do drugs and you're hooked on drugs, pretty soon you find the best way to make your next score is to sell drugs. So you go into the business. And fentanyl, from, you know, everything I read about it, and you've read about it, is bad news. Fentanyl, you know, even small amounts. Fentanyl-laced doobie. Do they call them doobies anymore? All right, there's the arrest, and let's bring him before Judge Jake. And we have to, we should have a music for, this is going to be the Judge Jake music from now on. Get ready. Let's go to the courtroom. Judge Jake will decide the fate of Corinne and Wayne, accused of trafficking drugs in the state of Wyoming. Claire McFarland with the story. Well, we don't want to implicate Claire in any of this. Claire's probably cringing. Oh, don't mention my name. I'm just the reporter. I'm just the messenger. Judge Jake will decide. Bring before me the contestants. I mean, the accused. I don't know the terminology, okay? I'm not a real judge.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. We bring before you the Honorable Judge Jake will decide the fate of Corinne McKay and William Wright.
Oh, there's some feedback. I got to work on my... What do you call the dude that says the case? The bailiff. That's Judge Judy's bailiff. What was his name? Rudy? I forget. I'm going to come up with a name for my bailiff. So he prays these two in front of me, and I will make my pronouncement. Guilty! Wait a minute. We haven't even told you the charges yet. Well, I'm sorry. Let me wait. Judge, bailiff, what are the accused of?
Selling drugs.
Guilty!
You haven't heard the full case yet.
I'm sorry. What drugs did they sell?
Fentanyl pills.
Guilty! Guilty! I don't even need to know the charge. If you bring before me anybody who's tattooed above the neck, guilty. That's one of Judge Jake's rules. Okay, Judge Jake is done. But yeah, I have little tolerance for people selling drugs. It's not good, kids. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do drugs. Don't sell drugs in Wyoming. One thing that has to change in Wyoming, for sure, is getting a better handle on property taxes. Because I was actually thinking about this the other day. What do you do about property taxes where your property valuation is escalating at a rate that's just stupid? And there's been proposed legislation. In fact, there was legislation recently passed concerning property taxation. And some of the lawmakers that voted for a certain bill are having buyer's remorse. Literal words quoted in Leo Wolfson's story. Some who supported putting Wyoming property tax amendment on the ballot now no longer support it. They took a closer look at it and they said, this could actually work out if the economy were to crash or if the economy were to go the other way. what we did in this bill or this amendment could make things worse. So I would like to talk to Leo, but I know he's about to be involved in a regular morning editorial meeting, so he's not going to be available. Maybe we'll get him in the next hour. But the story is in today's Cowboy State Daily, so you can see for yourself what's going on. Constitutional Amendment A, asking voters if they would support creating a separate fourth class of taxation status for certain residential properties. If approved, it would create a subclass of primary residences, which could be taxed and assessed at a different rate. Here's the problem, for the most part. You buy a house, and we're going to use Jackson, Wyoming, because there's no better example. You've seen the real estate scene in Jackson. It's bizarro. It's off the charts. So let's say you were lucky enough to have the foresight, or you just stumbled upon it. You just happened to be a regular Joe, and you bought your house in Jackson back in the 1960s, 70s, when it was reasonable. Probably seemed high even then, but you managed it. You slaved away, you saved, you paid off the mortgage, and you made it work somehow. And now you're living in a house that cost you originally $180,000 back in 1970, and due to escalating property values, real estate values, the assessment of your house says, you're sitting on a $3 million home in East Jackson. It seems like a regular, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, kind of older, ranch style 1970s house. You bought for $180,000, and now it's worth $3 million, and you're being taxed accordingly. Ouch. You can't afford that. You can't. That is not sustainable. And though you'd like to do your part in helping the education, because a lot of your property tax goes to the school, you can't do it. By now you're retired. You bought that house in 1970. You're retired. You can't sell the home, even though $3 million will fall in your lap when you do. Payday, right? You're thinking, well, sell it. You can do anything you want. You can go on did you read about that couple that found it was cheaper to go on a cruise, a permanent cruise, all year on one of the cruise ships, the Majestic. I don't know who the cruise companies are, but you do the math, and this couple found that they could be on a permanent cruise, booked week after week after week, just keep going on a cruise, and that would be their home. That would be their residence. They would get mail there on the cruise ship. I'm in Barbados this week, and they found that would be cheaper than trying to buy a home in, an area that's seeing escalating property values. Sadly, that's probably true in many cases. Unbelievable. So you're sitting in your $180,000 home, and the assessor comes by and says, this home's worth $3 million, and that's how we're going to tax you. And you watch your property, you open the property tax letter, and you got to be kidding. Taxing you right to the poorhouse. That's another thing. I'm not going to get into taxes. It'll make me mad. But, so the property tax situation, and there's been talk that one of the cures, and it seems easy to me, like no brainer. I don't know why this hasn't gone through in Cheyenne down there in the state capitol. I know it's been brought to it's been brought by legislators as a possible solution, and probably has been it hasn't gone through because it comes from Teton County. Whenever Teton County has an idea, whenever Teton County has a notion of how the state should do something and they present it to Cheyenne, the first thing Cheyenne does is show you what finger they prefer. And that's the way it's been for a long time. I get it. Teton County's a long way from Wyoming. Teton County's a long drive from the state of Wyoming, and I get it. And when Teton County has an idea about how something might go, the rest of the state says, that sounds like a you problem. And nothing happens. But the idea was, and it seems simple, your property tax should remain fixed at the assessment of your property when you bought it. When you first, so this couple that bought their home, this fictional couple in 1970 bought a $180,000 ranch-style home back in the 1970s. That's the way it should be assessed for as long as they live in it. That expectation that this is your property tax for your life, as long as you remain in that home, would feel good for the homeowner. I'll tell you that. But maybe it doesn't fill the coffers good enough. But it sure seems like an easy solution to property taxes that have just gotten out of hand everywhere. It's not just Teton County and Jackson. It's everywhere. You know, Wyoming, wherever you live, your property tax, I'm pretty sure probably went up and going up, up. Because somebody told you your house is worth way more. Well, and then if you go sell it, you can't buy a home in that same community likely. Sell your $3 million home in Jackson, and that's not enough money to even buy your way back in. You have to move. You have to go to Idaho like the rest of us. Idaho is filled with Wyoming expats that couldn't afford to live there no more. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to do the Western Ag Report. We're going to find out what's going on in the world of rodeo. Let's do that right now. Back to it because we did get a chance to capture Leo Wolfson. You can explain the story to us because I've read it twice. I still don't quite understand it, so I'm glad we have you, and I'm glad we were able to pull you right out of your normal day job. So you can thank us now for getting you out of that meeting, that boring Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Putting you in another Zoom meeting. But what's going on? The property tax thing, I know you had quoted at least one lawmaker who says, we might have made a mistake doing what we did. What's happening?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation with this constitutional amendment. What it would do if it passes is it creates a fourth separate class of taxation for owner-occupied primary residences. So what that basically does is it allows lawmakers to be able to reduce the tax rate if they so choose. Right now it's at 9.5%. The Wyoming Constitution forbids them from reducing that or increasing that at this point. So this gives lawmakers more flexibility, and that's what was the big selling point with it when it came out in 2023. And when they passed this, it passed pretty easily. At the time, there was a lot of hubbub about getting property tax relief at that time, and that has not since waned off at all. That is, it's almost as if nothing's happened, because the fever around that is still pretty high. But regardless, there's people like House Speaker Chip Nyman, House Majority Floor Leader Chip Nyman, who's running for House Speaker, I should say. He is concerned about it. He voted to support it, but now he's saying this opens up kind of a Pandora's box of what could possibly happen. You know, the legislature is turned more conservative, more to the right for sure the last few years, and the August primary election is only solidifying that more. But Nyman's concern, and other Republicans like Cody resident Vince Venata, their concern is that there's no guarantee for the future, and there's no guarantee what the Wyoming economic picture might look like in the future, and the state might be a lot more desperate for money and revenue at some point in the future than it is today. So they're concerned about the flexibility that this amendment would offer, that they think it could raise tax rates.
By the way, Chip just texted and said he would like to include that clip of you calling him the House Speaker already in his campaign. I'm just kidding.
Oh no, I might get heat for that.
Okay, so all right. So what we're talking about would not involve messing around with assessments, because that has become contentious. It's almost when the assessor comes around, it's like a visit from, the IRS. Like, you want to lock the door and you want to sick the dog on them. There's so many people that are contesting their assessment, and the assessments of your property have become a problem because that's what the taxes are based on. We're talking about trying to create a separate class of taxation where this is the percent you're going to pay because we think this is who you are. One of those.
Yeah, it does somewhat affect assessments though, because it's the tax rate. It's right now these are taxed at 9.5% is basically the assessment rate, and other properties like industrial is at 11.5%. So this would allow the flexibility though for that rate to be adjusted all the way down to 7.5%. They did create like a floor with this constitutional amendment, but the thing that it's worth pointing out is that it's up to the voters whether they want to do this, and this doesn't guarantee anything for the future. All it does is it unlocks potential flexibility. So the lawmakers could do literally nothing with this if they so choose. They could not touch it if they want. Like there's just a lot of options it opens up, but it's kind of a pathway to get there. But the thing that's worth noting, of course, of constitutional amendments in Wyoming is not only is it a yes/no situation, whether it passes or not. If someone doesn't vote on that, if they vote on other things, and then they forget to vote on that, they choose not to down ballot, that counts as a no vote. So the people who are trying to get this passed, it's kind of an additional hurdle that you have in Wyoming where a non-answer is considered a no vote.
Yeah, it's huge. It's undervoting, or I forget what the term for it, but it's similar to, one of those legislative sessions that if it's a budget session and it's a non-budget item, you need 2/3 majority. It is an extra high hurdle because a lot of people are going to ignore that probably. They won't know what it is. Without opinions, what are we going to see on the ballot? Constitutional Amendment A, when we head to the polls in November, what are we asking you to do? So our lawmakers saying, wait a minute, don't do it now. We changed our mind. Like, what do we do?
Yeah, it's crazy because you see the very same people. I mean, Chip Nyman, he voted to support this. He wanted this, a year and a half ago. So it's an interesting dynamic to see. But some people are still sticking behind it. Like Afton Senator, Dan Dockstetter, who was the lead sponsor on bringing this to the ballot, he still stands behind it. He when I talked to him the other day, he acknowledged some of the concerns, and he said they are real, but he still thinks it's a viable solution. One thing worth pointing out on this property tax topic is that the governor vetoed a bill this past spring that would have reduce property taxes by about 25% for most Wyoming residences. He vetoed that bill because he thought it was unfairly choosing which residences and which properties to give a tax break to. But that bill passed with a very, very large majority. It was near unanimous. And Dockstetter mentioned that to me as, hey, look, like we're still looking for solutions, and that solution was thrown in the trash. So that's why he still thinks this is viable for for going down that route.
Interesting. So the House and the Senate thought they had a plan, and governor just wasn't playing ball with that. So now you got to go another route, and now we're not sure that one works. But yeah, it's difficult property tax situation, and the more, of course, you reduce that and give relief to people, the less money coming in, and we already know oil and gas isn't what it used to be, and boy, I'd hate to speculate that we're heading for an income tax. That should be a naughty phrase in Cheyenne, but I don't know. Yeah. What do you do if the state needs money? How about, while we got you real quick, let's help us out with this pharmacy thing. Legislators not allowed to comment for I think the second time we've had a meeting of the state pharmacy board. I didn't even know there was a state pharmacy board. What is being decided, and why I think you are finding anytime a reporter goes to cover something and you find out the meeting is maybe not as public as you thought and public comments not taken, it's reason for reporters to be in the room, because you say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What is going on here, Leo?
Yeah, so this is a rather complicated situation. And the way I would start it off with is every once in a while, you'll see one of these obscure state boards come into the public limelight. These are the type of boards that get like 5 to 10 people at most at their meetings.
Nobody knows they even exist or meet. Yeah.
Right. Like you'd have to know. You have to know. It's kind of one of those deal. You got to be in the inside, and certainly news organizations are not covering their daily goings-ons. But what happened at a meeting of this state pharmacy board back in September was they had suspended the pharmacy license for City Drug, which is a popular pharmacy in downtown Cheyenne. And what had happened was City Drug rallied the public to come to this meeting and basically push back on the suspension of their license. The reason why they had their license suspended is a bit complicated, but basically they were accused of compounding medication that they weren't supposed to. They were basically the state said they did not have the proper equipment to be compounding that medication. I don't want to get into the complications of what that means, but basically accused of supposed to be doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing.
And that's why this board that nobody knows exists, is to, rule on these kind of situations. And they did. And now
100%. So that's what happened. It created a big public scene at this meeting. A woman had to be physically removed by Wyoming Highway Patrol troopers. Basically, the drama was that they would not allow public comment at this meeting. Because the investigation was still ongoing at the time. They didn't think it would be proper to have public comment. And this lady was physically removed. It was kind of ugly. And then flash forward to this week, the City Drug still has its pharmacy license suspended. They're still kind of in limbo as far as what their future looks like. And a settlement agreement was reached between the two parties. But at this meeting that was held yesterday at 7 a.m, virtual meeting, there was 9 state legislators on the call. And they still would not allow public comment on this issue because the issue was still technically ongoing. And State Representative Jeanette Ward, kind of a conservative firebrand, from Casper, called them out on this and said, like, this, said this is a public meeting. Why don't we are allowed any public comment? And an attorney for the board said, nope, sorry, this is state law allows this. This is still ongoing, so we got to restrict that. But it was very interesting to see that not only members of the public, but a state lawmaker was restricted from public commenting on this. And at the end of the day, City Drug was allowed to resume its business as far as pharmacy. They're kind of on a probation for 3 years, but its owner had her pharmacy license revoked personally for the next 3 years.
So I do. There's one part of the story that I like, as far as living in Wyoming, and it's the fact that legislators in Wyoming are doing what they're supposed to do. They represent the people. The people went to this meeting and weren't allowed to talk. They got a hold of their local representative, and state lawmakers at 7 a.m. joined in a Zoom meeting for a state board meeting. They probably have never watched one of these meetings, and they said, I'm going to represent my people because they were silenced at the last meeting. I'm going to get out. Is that, would you say that that's the first time there's been 7 legislators zooming in on a state farm board meeting?
I think it's extremely fair to say. I don't know for undoubtable fact, but yeah, actually 9 state legislators, and there was more than 40 people watching virtually. Yeah. I think 43 was the number. After this 7 a.m. meeting, while some people are getting wiping, getting ready for the day and getting the crust out of their eyes, this meeting was already taking place, and and you could tell. Some of these board members are clearly a little bit on edge about this topic. They actually held another meeting on Monday, and it was a similar large turnout for that meeting, and they quickly ended the meeting so they could review the settlement agreement a little bit longer. So it just shows how on edge they were about this topic. These are not publicly elected officials. They're all appointed by the governor, and these are just kind of everyday citizens. These are certainly not, paid politicians by any stretch of the imagination. So it's really kind of an interesting situation. And like I said, I've seen this with my job. Every once in a while, one of these boards pops up and there's some public scrutiny on it, and then it kind of goes away after a while, but it's just really interesting to see.
And that's a great segue to my one last question for you. Leo Wilson, political reporter for Cowboy State Daily. We're talking with him live from are you in Cheyenne right now? Yeah. Yep. As part of your beat, obviously you're covering the legislature when the session is going on. You're covering politicians and all things political. But as part of your beat and canvassing the state, how often are you hitting these little obscure board meetings? And this one popped up. How did it get on your radar, and why are you, like a lot of people, suddenly interested in what this pharmacy board is doing lately?
Well, to be honest, City Drug absolutely publicized it. They recruited a large number of people from the public. They publicized it on social media, on Facebook pages. They wanted attention on this. They very much feel like they've been wronged. Just conversations I've had with them and their attorney, they certainly don't feel like this is justified. They're fighting it. And I think, what's also worth mentioning is they did file a lawsuit actually over this back in September as well. And it's kind of to fighting this effort. So, at the end of the day, I think people know how to make noise, and if they want attention drawn to something, it's not that difficult to do if it's legitimate. And I think that's kind of what happened here.
No, and what is difficult to do is make sense of noise and make news of noise. And that's, Leo, that's what we do at Cowboy State Daily. That's what you do so well is, yes, we can see on social media, oh my goodness, this pharmacy is claiming this and waving their fist, and we see a photo of a woman being removed from a meeting by law enforcement, and we're trying to make sense, like, is this a real story, and what does this mean? And I'm so glad that you were, even though I read the story, I still didn't know what it meant, and I had to get you on, so we figured it out, I think, and this is ongoing. Stay on it, Leo.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jake.
Yeah, buddy. Okay. Thanks. That's Leo Wolfson, Cowboy State Daily reporter, and talking about a couple of stories that he's covering Just showing you how Cowboy State Daily getting around the state, how important news coverage is, how important reporters are, never more so in today's day and age where you've got fake news, you've got social media that sometimes pops in your face and you wonder what is going on. What is the State Pharmacy Board, and is this concerning that they don't take public comment? It's concerning enough for one young lady who was shown the door by state troopers. So yeah, there's something going on. Property tax as well. Leo Wolfson's on it all. Way to go, Leo. Where are we heading next? I think we should go to Alpine. Oh, no, we should. Oh, man, we really should try to get Mark Hines on again. I'm going to shoot Mark an email, try to talk to him about this this guy that was killed a mountain lion with a shovel. And he says he had to. He was with his dog. He said this mountain lion was showing indication that he wanted to attack him and or his dog. And in covering this story, our own outdoor reporter Mark Hines got a good quote from Republican Wyoming House Rep from Hewlett, Mr. Neiman, who knows a thing or two about mountain lions. Apparently, he said, "Don't kid yourself. Mountain lions love dogs. They will kill and eat dogs if they get a chance. I don't doubt it." And this mountain lion had eyes for this gentleman's dog, a Colorado man. And I guess all he had at hand was a shovel. I mean, I need to explore more about this story. We'll take a quick break. I'll try to scare up Mark Hines and do our commercial break. Our commercial breaks involve just playing some music, and I'm gonna try to get my you-know-what together. So I did find out a little bit more about this story as we hopefully anticipate the arrival of Mark Hines into our Zoom room. But Mark Hines, outdoor reporter, found this story, dug it up out of Colorado. And I know we cover Wyoming. Colorado's a border state. Many things that happen in Colorado have Wyoming implications. And anytime you're talking about mountain lions, we got a lot of mountain lions in Wyoming. They got mountain lions in Colorado. And this Colorado man, now I'm finally figuring out why he had a shovel. Because in my mind, he's out walking his dog, which is a husky, by the way. and they encounter a mountain lion, and somehow this guy produces a shovel. He's probably, rather than bear spray or a firearm or, a jackknife, his nearest weapon of choice is he finds a shovel. And then beats the tar out of this 95-pound mountain lion. So I had many questions. I'm actually reading the story now to figure out what happened. And he's in a campground. And this story, by the way, comes out of Colorado Park and Wildlife. They released a report. And this happened, I think, the report happened, was released on Wednesday. But the incident goes back to September 25th. An enraged 95-pound mountain lion encountered by a man and his dog at a campsite. So obviously a shovel was available because this guy probably had a shovel to, make sure his fire was out or something. So, Mark says he's in the Zoom room. I don't see him, but I'm waiting. Perhaps this will come about, but we're waiting for Mark Hines to join us in the Zoom room and talk about this story. I'm interested to see how he even, found it out. I'm also interested in making this so it isn't like my full-size screen. Oh, my goodness. How do I get out of here? I want to make Zoom smaller, but I'm not able to do that very well. All right, Mark, get on with us if you can. I'm just going to call you out now. Never mind email. I'm just going to say, Mark, come on the Zoom room with us. So this guy in Colorado with it, can you imagine the effort it might take? It would take. Oh, Mark says he's going to get on with us when the editorial meeting's done. So give him about 5 minutes. He'll jump on with us. Meanwhile, I will explore the story a little more. And, obviously you should be checking out these stories. If you're interested in following the morning show, you're probably interested in Wyoming and news and Cowboy State Daily. This story is one of the lead stories in the newsletter. Hopefully you have subscribed to our newsletter and the Cowboy State Daily morning show. Happy to highlight the stories of the day, including an enraged mountain lion who perhaps was wounded. There's indications this mountain lion may not be in the best frame of mind on September 25th when a man and his husky were accosted by said mountain lion. By the time officers got there, this is in Fremont County, Colorado, in Canyon City. Canyon City, I love Canyon City, Colorado. Great place. I think there's a prison very near there, but Canyon City's really nice area. I love it when I was down there. A wildlife officer responding said when he got there, the mountain lion was dead on the hood of this man's Jeep. The man's name was not released. And the officer responding is like, what the heck happened here? The man said his dog, a husky, started growling and barking. And the man looked up, and here's this lion putting a creep on him. You know how lions do. You know how cats do. I got this cat here sleeping on my couch. We've all seen how the cats do. They put the creep on. And that's unnerving. 95-pound mountain lion creeping at you and your dog. When the lion got to within about 10 feet, the dog engaged. And it's now lion and husky. And this man is fearing for his dog. I bet this husky probably doesn't go 95 pounds. So this is going to be an unfair fight likely. And this guy, he's thinking about his dog. And probably a good thing that this mountain lion had its concentration on the dog and did not see this man coming with the shovel. A shovel. I mean, that's all you have nearby. You're at camp. Maybe you're not a firearm owner. And you're looking around, you're like, I got a mountain lion that's trying to kill my dog. And there's a shovel that you shoveled, you put your campfire out. You doused it last night by throwing dirt on it. You grab a shovel. And you're not thinking at this point, these are like the people that jump in a raging river to save their drowning dog, You're not thinking. All you're thinking is, that's my dog. And this guy bangs a lion over the head. From what I see in the story, one whack, huh? And he killed it? Holy cow, that's impossible. The incident's still under investigation, according to CPW. The mountain lion had apparently, wildlife officer noted indications that the lion had suffered previous wounds and injury to its front right paw, scratches on its back. So this lion may have been in some kind of altercation. How often do mountain lions engage people? Not very often. It's pretty rare. Since 1990, according to CPW, there's been 25 recorded mountain lion attacks on humans since 1990. 25 on humans. And everything that I've read or understood about mountain lions, they're very elusive, very reclusive. They don't want anything to do with humans for the most part. You hardly ever see them. And it's really rare they would choose to attack a human. And when they do, and if they do, and this is just me talking from my experience and everything I know about them and what I've read, when they do attack humans, if they do attack humans, they're looking for things that they would be looking for in the wild. A possible prey that exhibits signs that it's killable. Young, wounded. Think about what a mountain lion goes after. Mountain lion sitting there, whether it's a mountain lion or a tiger in Africa, they're looking at the herd and they're picking out, oh, there's a small one, probably doesn't run as fast. There's one that's limping, probably killable. I can get to that one. So with humans, what you'll often see them attacking is kids, because they're small, they're sizable, and a mountain lion figures that's a good snack. Or in California, there's indications that rollerbladers attract mountain lions, and that may be the way they move. Rollerbladers, are able to move. Think about a cat. A cat, your domestic cat in the house. And if you try to play with him and show him something that moves fast, that catches the cat's attention. Instead of a human walking normally, you're rolling on rollerblades, and that extra speed may trigger something in a predatory animal like a mountain lion. And I've heard of rollerbladers particularly being subjects of attack or potential attacks in California. So, yeah, mountain lion, just the human conflict, though, pretty rare. 25 recorded instances of mountain lion attack on humans since 1990. Doesn't happen very often. But certainly mountain lions have probably been responsible for the disappearance of many pets. Coyotes also, you're missing your cat, coyote, fox, mountain lion. In Wyoming, you learn to try to coexist with animals, and big cats, mountain lions, 95-pound mountain lion certainly would go after your dog if you leave it out at night. And in this case, it all unfolded in front of the eyes of this camper in Colorado in Canyon City who said, no, you're not getting my dog. We got to take a news break. When we come back, hopefully we'll talk to Mark Hines and flesh out a little more of this mountain lion story that happened down there in Canyon City. First, let's check in.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Thursday, October 3rd. I'm Wendy Core, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, brought to you by the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, Cowboy State Daily's Jake Nichols brings to life the latest news, weather, sports, and in-depth conversations that matter to you. A father whose son has been missing for 2 weeks after climbing Yellowstone National Park's highest peak is urging people not to give up on him. Brian King Henke, father of 22-year-old climber and Yellowstone-based concessionaire worker Austin King, told Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland that King called his parents and at least 2 friends from the peak on September 17th. That was the last time anyone heard from him.
He's known now that Yellowstone not only is transitioning from rescue to recovery mode, which implies death, but they're also scaling back their search efforts here in the 12th day. And so he knows these things, and he, pretty much what he has to say is just keep praying for my son. He said that he won't give up hope until he actually gets a call, if he actually gets a call saying his son has died.
King Henke said new leads have been reported, including footprints found by searchers and signs of an off-permit fire or a fire outside of designated camping spaces. It was another nervous night for people in rural Wyoming, with an uncontained wildfire making a run at another small community in Sheridan County near the Montana border. The Elk Fire, which blew up to about 20,000 acres overnight Sunday and threatened the town of Dayton, grew to about 32,000 acres by Tuesday evening. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that the fire shifted with the winds overnight, taking aim at Parkman, a community of fewer than 500 people.
It didn't get close enough to actually prompt either of those places to evacuate. However, they were both put on kind of like standby notice. People in Parkman are continuing to rally to help those firefighters. When I talked to them this morning at the Parkman Bar and Grill, they were busy setting up a buffet and it's not just for the firefighters and the crews working the fires, it's for their families too. They told me that even though they're ready to evacuate, they're going to keep doing that until and if they're told to evacuate.
There was no school Wednesday for students at Tongue River High School in Dayton or the Slack School in Parkman. Well, there hasn't been much talk about a constitutional amendment going before voters this November until recently. Constitutional Amendment A asks the voters if they would like to support creating a separate fourth class of taxation status for certain residential properties. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that the proposal to bring the amendment to the voters was passed by the legislature in 2023, but some who supported it then have changed their minds.
One of these people is House Majority Floor Leader Chip Nyman, who said it opens up too many possible consequences that could be negative for taxpayers if things go in a negative way for Wyoming economically. He pointed out that technically, this could raise tax rates. It would allow lawmakers to raise tax rates in Wyoming sometime in the future, which could, potentially happen with a different legislature and a much worse economic picture, which very, very much concerns him.
If approved, the amendment would create a subclass of primary residences that could be assessed and taxed at a different rate than other properties in the state. Well, since 2020, the western Wyoming town of Alpine has seen its population balloon from about 900 to an estimated 1,300, and the proposed expansion of a gravel pit right on the edge of town is only adding to the community's growing pains. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that residents are worried that fine particle silica dust from a proposed 240-acre expansion of the Alpine Bear Pit gravel operation could pollute the air as well as water in the nearby Palisades Reservoir.
The gravel pit says it will have all kinds of benefits and will help improve the water flows into the Palisades Reservoir there. On the other side, you have some residents who really don't like the idea because they're not too keen on all the dust of the gravel pits. You've got like 20 different agencies involved and they all have to go. So it's just, it's a huge headache. And it's part of really the growing pains that Alpine has been going through.
Residents are also concerned that gravel pit expansion could disrupt the local elk herd's migration route and disrupt recreation on the reservoir. Well, if anyone thought September was hotter and drier than it has been in decades, they're right. It has been in parts of Wyoming. But Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that the warm weather hasn't altered long-term forecasts for the Cowboy State, which say that people should expect a colder than normal winter.
The numbers from the National Weather Service offices in Cheyenne, Riverton, and Rapid City showed that September temperatures were anywhere from 3 to 10 degrees above their historic averages, usually their 30-year averages, and precipitation was way down. So what does that mean? It means September was dry and warm, and in some cases record-breaking dry and warm, but that doesn't have any kind of extended meaning, or at least a better way to put it is a warm fall and a dry fall doesn't mean a warm, dry winter.
Winter 2024-25 should have above average snowfall, but certain areas may be more impacted than others. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
Well, it's going to be a little bit cooler across the Cowboy State and also a little less windy. That'll be good news. Winds won't be as gusty as they were on Wednesday, and temperatures will be a good 10-15 degrees cooler. There's a bit of a front and is going across southern Canada. But as we head into tomorrow and the upcoming weekend, not too much is going to change. We'll have these up and down temperatures, sunny to partly sunny skies and windy areas. We also will continue with extremely high fire danger statewide. There's a small chance this weekend of a few isolated sprinkles in the far northern counties of the state, but that's a real maybe, and we'll have more on that tomorrow.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 20 seconds with more news.
When we say community is the heart of Hilltop, we're talking about a team of bankers committed to improving the place we call home. A team that shows up every day to help businesses thrive and gives back to our neighbors through time, attention, and service. We're inspired by the way our bankers give back because that's one of the many qualities that makes us truly a community bank. Hilltop Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Cheyenne's City Drug has been accused of illegally compounding and dispensing medications, and a previous Wyoming State Board of Pharmacy meeting that did not allow public comment on the issue became highly contentious. Cowboy State Daily's Leah Wolfson reports that at a meeting early Wednesday morning, even 9 state legislators did nothing to persuade the board to allow the public to comment on its decision to suspend the license of the popular Cheyenne Pharmacy.
State Representative Jeanette Ward, who was one of the 9 legislators who appeared at the meeting, to call them out for this and question why public comment wasn't being allowed. An attorney for the board explained that because the investigation and disciplinary action into City Drug is still ongoing, they could not allow public comment on the matter.
By a 5-1 vote on Wednesday, the board approved a settlement agreement allowing City Drug to continue filling prescriptions while serving a 3-year stayed suspension. A Colorado man who killed a mountain lion with a shovel probably saved his dog from being devoured by the big cat. Outdoors reporter Mark Hines spoke with an experienced Wyoming mountain lion hunter who said those lions will kill and eat dogs if they get a chance.
A man reported that on September the 25th, he was in a campground at night and a mountain lion approached him and his dog. I think he said within about 10 yards of the dog, and the cat just started to become incredibly aggressive. So he grabbed a shovel and killed it. My source from Wyoming basically said mountain lions can and do view pet dogs as prey.
Had the big cat succeeded in its apparent goal, it wouldn't have been the first time that mountain lions took a toll on Colorado dogs. Residents around a small community in rural Boulder County said they lost 23 dogs to mountain lions in 2022. Police say they've caught 2 people trafficking bulk amounts of fentanyl and meth from Aurora, Colorado into Park County. 35-year-old Corinne McKay and 58-year-old Wayne Wright each face up to 80 years in prison and $100,000 in fines if convicted on 4 felony drug charges apiece. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that agents used various investigative techniques to apprehend the pair.
They tracked them to Aurora, and then they watched them come back through just outside Meeteetse, and they pull them over. And the document alleges that the woman just was stuffing something under the seat as the deputy walked up, and it turned out to be allegedly 2,000 fentanyl pills with another 5,000 in the trunk and a pound of methamphetamine and a little marijuana from a dispenser.
They both have a preliminary hearing set for Thursday morning, at which time Cody Circuit Court Judge Stephen Joseph Dara will decide whether the state has probable cause to keep prosecuting them. And Alaska's North Slope is isolated, prone to brutal weather, and home to gigantic, fearsome polar bears. And welder Tex McBride of Gillette absolutely loves working there. He told Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines that even though he knows how to be bear aware from living in Wyoming, polar bears in the Arctic Circle take being bear aware to a whole new level.
It's kind of cool when stories lead to other stories. There was a gentleman who's from Gillette, saw the story about the Wapiti school we did and their grizzly resistant fence, and he said, "Oh boy, that's nothing, guys." He welds in oil fields up on Alaska's North Slope, and they have polar bear proof fences up there because they've got polar bears, which are on a whole other level. They're like the ultimate bear, and so they have really these like heavy duty steel cage-like structures they have to walk through when they leave their man camp, and they look around, make sure there aren't any bears, and then they go outside.
Polar bears aren't the only apex predators lumbering around the North Slope. McBride said last year a worker had to scramble on top of a truck to escape an irritated grizzly. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. And you can watch this newscast every day by clicking subscribe on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to drop in on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake Nichols, Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily.
And we welcome to the Zoom room our own Mark Hines, Cowboy State Daily. Mark, we're having some Zoom room problems this morning, but you look fantastic. We don't see me, so all is good. You were all over the place on news today in Cowboy State Daily, beginning with, let's start with a mountain lion story. Killing a mountain lion with a shovel can't be easy. Holy cow.
No, it was probably a combination of guts, really good aim, and luck, I'm guessing. I'm hoping to talk to the guy later today.
Good.
I've got a line on his phone number, so
yeah.
But yeah, he's kind of one of those. I mean, if it actually went down as it was reported by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I mean, it was kind of a, it was either the lion or his dog, because mountain lions and dogs, they get along well. They get along like cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like each other, and mountain lions do like to eat dogs. And in the wild, the canine and the feline war goes on. Wolves and mountain lions will occasionally kill each other. In fact, they think that at least one of the wolves that has died in Colorado since the reintroduction was killed by a mountain lion. So definitely not a lot of love lost between those two species.
For sure. CPW is still investigating that whole thing, make sure this guy's story shakes out. But it would indications when dogs go disappearing in, Colorado Front Range and some of these communities that, yeah, the first one you blame is these big cats, these mountain lions. People, when they hunt mountain lions, hunt them with dogs because
yes.
When the only ways to find them, they're very difficult. You don't just go out and see them everywhere.
No. I've never seen one. I've seen tracks. If they don't want to be seen, they're not going to be. So yeah, it definitely does take the hounds to find them usually.
Yeah, I hope you can get a chance to speak with this guy because, that's got to be unnerving. But we all find that extra adrenaline when it's our pet. We? It doesn't, if it's a grizzly, a lion, it don't matter. We're going to grab a shovel, a fountain pen. We're going to get after it, man. We're going to save that dog.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. People love their dogs.
What a situation. Well, at least it wasn't a polar bear. That is a whole nother thing. Holy cow. And you were dead on when you said, I love it when a story becomes another story. We heard after the Wapiti Elementary School that tried to protect its students with something that'll deter grizzly bears. And then Tex says, oh, man, you should see Alaska. So how'd that happen?
It happened just like that. He reached out and made a comment, and so I got a hold of his phone number and called him. He answered right away. The guy's great to talk to. It sounds like he's just having a ball up there on the North Slope. I mean, of course, he's up there for work, so that's mainly what he does. Is he works really hard, but he gets to be around all this cool wildlife. That includes polar bears. And you're right. They're a different animal, no pun intended. I mean, grizzlies, as I mentioned in the article, grizzlies are kind of omnivores. They're opportunists. But polar bears, everything they eat, they have to hunt and kill. So they are of a different mindset. They are, they are truly a predator in the truest sense of the word. So they're definitely nothing to mess with. I've heard some from people who've been up north, and they say they're pretty darn intimidating.
That's an interesting observation. I didn't think of that. Like I think of polar bears. Many of us, our only exposure with a polar bear is seeing them in the zoo, and they look so fun and cuddly. They're, like a koala. But you're right. A grizzly spends a lot of its time eating bugs and plants roots.
And
grass. Polar bears got to go eat. They got to spill blood to get lunch.
Exactly. They have to kill to eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good point. So that makes them a whole different kind of predator. Tex seems like your BFF now that you two have a correspondence. You and him love wild country, wild animals. I
can just tell by talking to him. He's a guy, he loves where he is, he loves what he does. And that's good. It's good to see people in those circumstances.
Yeah. So, and then finally, to round out the triple play for you, the triple threat, the story about Alpine, and I had Susan Kolbus call me the other day and just mentioned she's on the town council or something. She's kind of a newbie to the area. Mm-hmm. And she's noted the growing pains that Alpine's going through. Yeah. They have a charter school that a lot of people don't seem to like, and they've got a gravel pit that nobody likes a gravel pit. What? These poor guys in Alpine. I mean, what do you do? The gravel pit was there before the town started getting big, and now nobody likes it. What's happening?
Yeah, and it's one of those situations. It's similar to that road. I think it's called Boswell Road I wrote about here in Albany County, where you have 15 different does it belong to the county, the Forest Service? I'm talking about the road. I mean, they can't figure out whether it belongs to the county, the private property owners, the Forest Service, the BLM. It's the same. I mean, you've got so many overlapping jurisdictions, and that just makes everything 10 times more complicated for everybody as they try to unravel the way forward and what's going to be the best thing to do to make the most people happy. And I think that story just kind of skimming the surface of what's going on in Alpine. It sounds like it's really it's purported to be the fastest growing place in Wyoming right now. I don't know whether that's true, but it's definitely, I mean, they got 1,300 people. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you consider 2 years ago they had 900, a jump from 900 to 1,300, that's a significant growth in population percentage. And if I understand correctly, they are talking about a new school there because they have more kids there, and they have kids that go beyond the age of that preschool that they currently have. So I think it's just an interesting snapshot of what these towns face when they go through explosive growth.
Yeah, and 1,300 might be lowballing it. I've been there, and there's 1,300 people in the Snake River Canyon on any given day driving from Alpine to Jackson. It's a bedroom community. A lot of people that live there just live there, and they go work in Jackson and hustle their buck. But yeah, it's growing. It's blowing up. And yeah, you did have a whole section called multi-agency confusion. Who's in charge? The Bureau of Rec. There's so many different hands in the pot there. I don't know. But gravel pits, nobody seems to like them. So is there anything you can't cover, Mark, from polar bears to a gravel pit that no one likes to a mountain lion getting beaten?
As long as the story is interesting, I'll cover it.
Wow. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
I appreciate you carving out some time.
You have a good one.
You too. That's our own Mark Himes, outdoor reporter for Cowboy State Daily. Also, taking an opportunity to find out more about a gravel pit in Alpine. a mountain lion that's killed with a shovel by a dog owner that was worried for his pet, and polar bears in Alaska, because we find out if you're trying to coexist with bears, as you are in Wapiti, Wyoming, where they have an elementary school that the school grounds are protected by a fence and some routine grizzly bear, warnings. They blow the whistle, and they got all kinds of protocol. That was pretty cool. Tex McBride, a Gillette resident who works often in the oil fields as a welder up in Alaska, said, well, you ought to see, grizzlies are, yeah, but then polar bears are, whoa. And here's what we do in Alaska. So, yeah, that's pretty neat. Mark with 3 big stories for Cowboy State Daily today. Make sure you're checking all that out when you are on the interwebs, cowboystatedaily.com. Look at our news, join the newsletter, and join me every morning as we flesh out these stories. Let's take a look at the rodeo scene. Wyoming loves their rodeo, and we're getting down towards the end of the season here, heading for the NFR. Coming up in Vegas in December is the Western Ag Rodeo Show.
Hi, and welcome to the Rodeo Roadshow. I'm Will Rasmussen on the Western Ag Network. The last major rodeo of the 2024 regular season happened in the Sanford Center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Did a lot to pave the way to a national finals qualification for a lot of guys. We'll take a look at the results of the Governor's Cup from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Big money. Stay close.
Experience the ultimate rush. There's only one sport that's dangerous. There's only one sport that's fast. There's only one place where it all happens. The Nile Pro Rodeo. It's 8 heart-pounding rodeo events with the greatest athletes in the arena. Join us October 11th through 12th at Metro Park for 2 electrifying performances. Secure your tickets now at metropark.com. Get ready. This is the Nile Pro Rodeo.
Ranchers, when pounds still equal dollars, don't let shrinkage on shipping days sacrifice your profitability. Hi, this is Shane from Western Ranch Supply. Depending on the distance, weather, stress, and other factors, shrink can be anywhere from 7 to 8% when transported to an off-site scale. Let Western Ranch Supply help with a rice lake scale that's easy to use, durable, NTEP approved, and legal for trade. Check out a rice lake scale at one of our stores in Billings or Great Falls.
The regular season of professional rodeo is officially over, and the big finale was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota this past weekend. And the Ultimate Champions won a lot of money in between the first time they nodded their head and the last time they nodded their head. And the people I'm going to talk about, the last time they nodded their head, won $30,000 to win the final round. The champion in the bareback riding, Jess Pope from Missouri, a recent guest on the road show. Steer wrestler Dalton Massey from Oregon remains on top of the number 1 standings in the steer wrestling world. In the team roping, Andrew Ward from Oklahoma and 2-time world champion Colin Von Ahn from Oklahoma win the team roping event. The great Ryder Wright from Utah, the saddle bronc champion. And there is Shad Mayfield, the world champion tie-down roper, winning the Governor's Cup. He is from New Mexico. Breakaway roper Shelby Beaujolais Medjid was 4th place in the world standings. She is now number 1 by virtue of that victory in Sioux Falls. Barrel racer, 4-time world champion Haley Kinzel wins the barrel race. And Florida's Clayton Sellers on his way to another NFR. The Florida man wins the bull riding world title. On the Rodeo Roadshow, I'm Will Rasmussen on the Western Ag Network.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Western Ag Network, for getting us all up to date in the rodeo world. We love our rodeo in Wyoming. We're kind of making a little bit of a studio rodeo today with trying to work out, technical problems again. We're only in day 3 of the morning show, so hopefully you'll cut us a little slack this week as we try to figure out new things. It's all new to us. And I'm having a few computer issues, but we'll get it ironed out. We'll get the show rolling. We're going to have like way more guests coming on and get it a little more organized. Make sure we deliver to you, Wyoming, everything you're expecting to see and hear and learn every morning. And I want to just kind of jump around in no particular crazy order and talk about animals. We were talking about mountain lions and some of their behavior and the fact that they're so elusive in the news today. In Cowboy State Daily, we just talked about the mountain lion that walked into a Canyon City campground in Colorado and got involved with a man's dog, his husky, and this man feared that his husky was going to be killed and eaten by this mountain lion. So he intervened with a shovel, hit the mountain lion over the head, and killed him. That does not happen every day. None of that happens every day. Mountain lion walking into your camp does not happen every day. Killing a mountain lion with a shovel, certainly. Maybe it has never happened in history. As Mark indicated, and he spends a lot of time in the outdoors, Mark Hines, he's never put eyes on a mountain lion, but has seen their tracks. I have seen their tracks. I've seen indication, but for decades, I had never seen a mountain lion actually in the wild until very recent, like a year or two ago. I saw a mountain lion on an elk carcass, and I came upon him, and he kind of slunk away reluctantly. He's like, I don't want to leave my dinner here, but he crept away. So, yeah, I've seen one, but it does not happen very often. You even spot one. And then to have one walk in on your camp and come after your dog and then kill it with a shot. I mean, this is one in a jillion. That's why, CPW, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, still investigating that, see if the story checks out. And Mark is hoping to talk to the guy himself and get it from shovel wielder's own mouth. Just crazy, interesting story out of Colorado. But animals, yeah, polar bears, mountain lions, honey badger, animals are crazy. This story I'm looking at about a honey badger, it's nothing taking place in Wyoming. I just thought it was interesting. A meme popped up on my socials, and it talks about the honey badger. Badgers, by the way, I've run into badgers before, and they are fierce. Badgers, pound for pound, are the nastiest animal. You don't want to mess with badgers. What is the problem, Kat? I should sick a badger on you. Yeah, badgers are... Every animal in the animal kingdom will back down from a badger, pretty much. So the honey badger, by the way, eats porcupines as part of its diet. Porcupines, like with the stickers. It eats poisonous snakes for breakfast, porcupines for lunch. It raids beehives for honey, hence the honey badger name. It kidnaps... I love this. It kidnaps baby cheetahs and steals food from full-grown lions. Honey badger don't care. Remember that meme? Remember that was a whole thing, like going back, I don't know, quite a few years now. It was on YouTube. There's memes everywhere. Honey badger don't care. In fact, if you look that term up, if you Google that term, honey badger don't care, honey badgers really don't care. It's funny what questions are asked by Google. Why do honey badgers not care? Because they're badasses. Honey badger don't care. Eat porcupine and poisonous snakes, raid beehives for the honey for dessert, kidnap baby cheetahs, and steal food from lions, honey badgers. And we'll go from honey badgers to corvids. Whether you want to talk about magpies or ravens or crows, I found this super fascinating. When talking about the intelligence or the presumed intelligence of animals in the wild, you probably wouldn't necessarily put the intelligence of, your average crow or raven as very high. Rating intelligence, you'd probably say, well, of the animal kingdom, I heard dolphins and porpoises are pretty smart. I know border collies that are smarter than your average 8-year-old, pretty much. And I don't know that I would, put a crow or a raven as real high in intelligence. But interesting study found that corvids are very smart. The term bird brain does not apply to crows and ravens. I have watched crows, watched them work together to lift the lid off a grease can. You know those 55-gallon drums that sit behind a restaurant and they hold old discarded grease? The crows want to get after them. One crow can't lift the lid of that can, but him and his buddies can. And I've watched 6, 7 of them group together to move the lid slightly off the barrel of a grease can so they get after the stuff inside. Incredible cooperation, but that's nothing compared to this study that I read about that was done. And I think they were using a crow, but they're all the same. Crows, magpies, ravens, they're all the corvid family. I think this was a crow. And they were trying to ascertain whether the crow could learn or would use a tool. And it's one of the definite... I got to let this cat out. He's driving me nuts. Stand by. Okay, cat gone. Wildlife scientists, animal scientists were interested in learning whether a crow would use a tool. It's one of the definitions of supposed intelligence. Humans, humanoids, whatever we are, we're top of the scale because we use tools. Well, apes, monkeys, primates use tools. They'll use a rock to crack something open. Eagles will pick up prey, and to kill the prey, they will drop it from a high altitude. So animals do use tools. Would a crow use a tool? And so in this one particular study, they had a paper clip shaped in the shape of a hook. So you had the end of the paper clip, they acted as a hook, and the crow was able to pick it up in its beak and extract food that it couldn't get to without the tool. So you had food in I forget what kind of container they were using, some kind of vessel, and the crow could eat some of it, and then he got down to the point where he couldn't fit his beak in the vial or in whatever it was. And the only way he could get it was they left this paper clip sitting there on the table, and the crow said, there's a paper clip in the shape of a hook. And he picked it up, and sure enough, he hooked out the food that he wanted. Example of a crow using a tool. Unbelievable. But not the only thing that wowed scientists. They left the room. Apparently, scientists took a lunch break, and the crow was sitting on the table with the food still, and with a paper clip that had not been formed or bent in a hook. It was just an original paper clip, untouched as a paper clip. What wowed scientists was this crow, while nobody was watching it except for on camera, still wanted food, but he didn't have the hook around anymore. So he took the paper clip and shaped his own hook using his feet and his beak, and he made a hook out of the paper clip and scooped his food out. So he not only used tools, he manufactured a tool to help him get his food. Next time you see a crow, don't be thinking this crow is some kind of dummy. Underway and wrapping up as we get into the 9 o'clock hour. We've had a lot of fantastic stories that are stories of the day. We're still keeping our eye on 2 major wildfires in Wyoming. It's been a tough year, 60,000 acres burned. I think is the number. You've got a 35,000, 32,000 or so elk fire going on up there in the northern Bighorn Range, threatening the communities of Dayton and Ranchester. Keeping a close eye on that. Weather forecast not favorable today or tomorrow. Windy, warm, no rain in sight. And that's for the next 8 days, according to Don Day, weatherman. So it's going to have to be firefighter efforts, acts of God that are going to stop this thing. That's still going. Meanwhile, a little bit better behavior out of the fire. The Pack Trail fire and the Fish Creek fire on Togety Pass that have been throwing flames toward Brooks Lake Lodge, the historic lodge there. And that fire's settled a little bit yesterday and overnight. But again, forecast calls for dry, windy conditions. Red flag warnings across the state anywhere there's wildfires. And they aren't the only fire. You could have more fires pop up, as this is one particularly weird October. I mean, we're 3 days into it. By the time the weather forecast plays out the way Don Day sees it, we could be 10 days into October and have not only no snow, no rain, and temperatures well into the 70s, if not 80. Record-setting stuff in September. We talked to Don Day about that. That was one of the hottest, driest Septembers on record. Newcastle, Gillette, many cities in communities in Wyoming broke records for average high temperatures in September and low rain totals. All the stories we've been covering today. Let's check out a quick weather map, weather forecast. Road conditions right now, I mean, we can do a traffic report, but there's nothing going on with the roads. Everything looks good. We had some high-profile wind warnings down there, in the southeast part of the state, as we always do. The 14 is closed coming into Ranchester up there in the Bighorns, and that's going to be for a while. You're not going to be able to travel that. That's the ongoing fire situation. All of the roads in Wyoming, every road we see, is looking clean and green, so you're fine with your travel across the state. Temperatures across the state. Thermopolis, you're at 54 right now. Sheridan, 46. Gillette 48, down there in Wheatland 56 degrees. Rock Springs already at 60, 40 in Jackson. Heading for highs today, a little bit cooler than it was yesterday, a little bit cooler than it will be tomorrow. Yo-yo effect on day explained why, and I've already forgotten. But it's cool today, warmer tomorrow. Kind of a typical fall day today where temps across the state going to be in the 60s, mid or upper 60s, rather than mid or upper 70s as they were the other day, as they will be tomorrow. In fact, let's have Don Day tell you about the whole forecasting deal. Don Day's complete weather forecast for those who love nerding out on weather. Let's do that.
Welcome to Thursday, the 3rd day of October, 2024. It's the same weather, it's just a different day in terms of how things are going to roll with the weather. And really this comment of same weather, different day is going to be how it goes here for another week or a little bit longer than that. So we'll continue to have to be concerned about, like what you're seeing in the photo here, the smoke from the elk fire making for very pretty sunset photo, but fire conditions are going to remain sky high across the Intermountain West through the weekend and through next week. So we'll need to continue to exercise extreme caution as warm and windy periods are going to continue. This sort of back and forth where we have a windy day, then the winds let up the next, then we get windy again, then they let up. This back and forth will continue as systems move right along the U.S.-Canadian border. That just is going to be what we've had. This is what we're going to have for a little bit longer. We're going to be looking at this through the rest of this week, through the weekend, and next week's weather is basically going to be the same. Now, by next weekend, there's a little bit of a change in the weather pattern. I wouldn't call it a dramatic change, but maybe a hint of other changes to come, kind of like a situation to where this change is a signal that bigger changes are coming a bit later. And we'll see that by next weekend. And as we mentioned yesterday, we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence versus deterministic models, which what I show you every day on this podcast is a deterministic model, which basically makes some assumptions on how the atmosphere works. You put the inputs in, the observations, but it's just kind of a one-shot deal in terms of how the weather is going to be over time versus the artificial intelligence modeling that's coming out more and more these days. Unfortunately, the fire continues to rage there. The fire activity in northern and western Wyoming continues to go, and Mother Nature is not helping out. The only thing that's helping out are these longer nights and shorter days, and that's just because of, well, that's what happens this time of year. So we have a lot of not only bored weather people, but these horses are just not impressed either. And when you take a look at how things can change very quickly, here's a shot of the Tetons from the air and then smoke coming in a little bit later. So the smoke and haze is going to be something that's going to be on the lookout for. Speaking to be on the lookout for, the comet showing up, still very low on the horizon, but the bigger show is coming later this month, especially after the 12th of October, and we'll get to that later. In fact, there's not only one comet, there's two. A new comet has appeared. We'll talk about that as we get a little bit closer. I took a little bit of a wider perspective on the satellite image this morning and put it in motion just to continue to show us that there's a lot going on here in the North Pacific, from the Gulf of Alaska through the Aleutians, across the North Central Pacific, where this semi-permanent area of low pressure in this blocking pattern continues. So we'll continue to see, as you see these high clouds streaking into Western Canada, but a big area of high pressure right here over the central and western United States has formed in response to this big low. So all the weather is going to go up there from Mexico to Montana, and then from really most of the Pacific Northwest down into the Baja. There's just nothing going on. And this is why. This area of low pressure is here, this area of low pressure over Hudson Bay, and high pressures in between. Strong jet stream winds aloft continue to move overhead and get closer, and this strong gradient in temperature aloft leading to strong winds aloft, which means when they move perpendicular to the Cotton-Hill Divide, you're going to have windy periods. And this is certainly going to be the case as we get into tomorrow and Saturday. Winds pick up in response to that little wave moving right along the U.S.-Canadian border. There'll be precipitation along and north of that low, windy conditions south of that low, and temperatures that will fluctuate a little bit. So it's the same situation. These are the wind gusts between today and Sunday. So it's going to be quite windy across North Dakota, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Montana, and the wind-prone areas of Wyoming, but even getting back into Idaho and parts of the northern Bighorn Basin, rather the Great Basin. So you can see plenty of wind along the path of those lows. And there's really nothing that's going to change that, so we'll have to be dealing with bouts of wind. And you can see we have windy areas in the fire areas, so just not what you want to see. Strong winds at times along the Interstate 80 corridor, so we got to be extremely careful. Let's hope that we don't get anything else started up here. When we take a look at precipitation between now and Sunday, nothing, really barely anything across the region, except where that moisture is getting pushed on shore here into British Columbia and parts of the Pacific Northwest. This is just literally a strong flow of moist air into the higher terrain, and that's forcing out precipitation. But you get east of the Cascades, you can see the line there, east of the Canadian Rockies, you're just not going to get much. As we take a look at what may happen by next weekend, so I'm already jumping to the 12th of October, what looks to happen is that one of these lows coming off the, let's call this is the big low that spins off the little ones. We're going to see one maybe take a little bit of a detour more towards California and the Great Basin. Now, when this happens, notice it's cut off from the colors up here. So it's not going to drag in anything terribly cold. But we may see by next weekend a little bit of a low come into the west. There'll be some weather with it, not a lot, but some. But when we start to see this, that means that maybe upstream things are going to start to change a little bit. And that's what we'll talk about now, is when are those bigger changes coming? We gave you a hint. It was likely going to be a little bit after this time period of after next weekend. So let's take a look at the deterministic European model that goes out to 15 days. So this basically goes out to Friday, the 18th of October. So we're already that far out before we see anything that really is going to change much. What we have is we still have that low in the Gulf of Alaska. However, it's being displaced now a little bit more to the east. And you see this pink area right here? This is an area of high pressure that the models want to see forming a little bit further east into the Pacific and bulging northward up here a little bit. Then notice this tight gradient, how the tightness of those black lines are. This is a really strong jet stream wind, but it's not directed towards Canada anymore. It's directed southeastward into the western United States. Also notice we have high pressure building along the east coast. This low pressure goes up into here. So basically what this means, what the model is seeing here, is that eventually around or after the 17th, 18th of October, the western part of the United States is going to be in better position for this to move in and this high pressure ridge to build up here. So what we're looking at is this model is built from all the balloons that go up twice a day, all the satellite data, all the things that we use to input into the models is put into the model, and then it's taken forward in time. And it's taken forward in time by 2 weeks. And that's what's supposed to happen. That's the way the atmosphere is supposed to respond to form this pattern based on just that one set of inputs. So we call this a deterministic model, and this is what we use most of the time. Now, with the artificial intelligence that's coming on now, we have the ability to use artificial intelligence to maybe say, all right, is there a better way to do this? Because this deterministic model uses inputs of measured weather. It doesn't put into, at least to a large degree, what we call climatological components, which means, well, does this weather pattern make sense based on what we've seen in the past? Is there anything to counterbalance what the model says should happen based on what we know has happened before? And I talk about analog forecasting techniques all the time, which is, does the model make sense to what has happened in the past? So what AI is doing is it's doing exactly that, which I think is very smart, which is, okay, the model sees something based on the inputs we put in, but is the model representative of really what has happened before. And that's what AI does. So for the same forecast time period, for the exact same time, the deterministic model sees this for the 18th, AI sees this. Now you might look at that and say, well, there's some big differences there. Obviously there are, but the same premise is a tight gradient here, the lows further west in the Gulf of Alaska, and we still have this area of low pressure here. So if we look back and forth, yes, they look different, but structurally, it's showing basically the same thing here. Now, what the AI does is it takes this model, and then it goes back in time to the late 1940s when we can actually put together some weather history that we feel confident about. So it goes back to, let's say, roughly 1950, and it looks at all the weather patterns, and it says, is this situation that we see right here, does that make sense with what we see in the past? And if it doesn't, what have we seen in the past when we merge the model with the past and we get this? So this is a very clever way of being able to counterbalance the model and say, what has history shown us? And this is a really clever way to use AI. Does this mean AI is going to be the savior of weather forecasting and put somebody like me out of business? The answer is probably not, at least in the short term. The reason is this. There's two big weaknesses to the AI when it comes to the modeling and the weather forecasting. One is it's using a model as the base, which means there's inherent deficiencies in long-range forecasting, even out 5 days or more, and this goes out 15. So there's the basis for the AI to make the forecast starts with a model, okay? That's strike number one. Strike number two is when we take a look at the database of historical weather, going back to 1950 or so is good. I mean, that's good, but it's not as good as it could be if we had a bigger database of known weather, not only back to 1950, but it would be great if we could go back further, but we really can't because we just don't have it. We just don't have the ability to have any high degree of confidence before then to be able to build what happened on a global basis before then. But it's a really good start. And so what I like to see when I see an AI pattern versus the deterministic saying basically the same thing, well, then your confidence goes up that maybe the pattern that we see, this pattern change coming around the 18th or so, is likely to happen because historically this type of pattern has led to these changes. And when I see this tight gradient like this here, and I see this tight gradient here, even though they're not in exactly the same place, they're basically whistling the same song, the same tune. So there's a lot more to AI in the weather. I just kind of scratched the surface, but that's a basic interpretation of how it goes. You're going to hear more about AI, but remember that AI is going to be based on a model to start. So it's not necessarily something new under the sun. It's a good use of our computing power and a good use of AI, and it should get better over time. Have yourself a good Thursday. We'll see you Friday.
I'm a little bit frightened that Don Day's using artificial intelligence to do his weather forecast. One thing you'll never find around here in the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show studio is any kind of sign of intelligence. Artificial or otherwise. I don't use AI. I don't like AI. Earlier this morning I said I barely even use cruise control in my truck. I just don't like the idea of robots doing stuff for me or computers or anything else. I can't even count on this computer to adequately broadcast our signal. Hopefully it's been good today. I got some statistics that would indicate we're a little sketchy, but I think we're fairly good. Tomorrow's going to be a great day. We're going to talk to Jay and Worland, find out why they're dropping pumpkins on Wile E. Coyote, why they're dropping pumpkins at all. We'll also check in again with perhaps Andrew Rossi, who can... Andrew's the pumpkin king. Even though Jay Richard is called the pumpkin king, Andrew Rossi, our own Cowboy State Daily reporter, has been all about pumpkins lately. You saw his story going back a few days, September 30th, about the Utah couple who set a new Utah state record, 2,289-pound pumpkin. Whoo! 2,000. You're talking about a 1-ton pumpkin. That beat the old record, I think, by like 2 ounces, by what amounts to a can of beer. And all congrats to Ralph and Lana. The pumpkins, the reason we're talking about a Utah pumpkin, record-setting pumpkin, is the seed they used to grow their winner came from a guy from Cheyenne, a Cheyenne pumpkin grower, Andy Corbin, who set his own state record, a Wyoming state record last October when he grew a 2,062-pounder. But of that genetic string comes the Utah couple that tops that 2,289-pound pumpkin. We're going to drop, compared to that, we're going to drop a tiny pumpkin, half the size of the record setter, about 1,000-pounder. Jay Richard going to drop it on a figurine of Wile E. Coyote. That poor coyote's been through enough already. They're going to do that Saturday, the annual pumpkin drop. We're all anticipating that Saturday in Worland. If you get a chance to get there, get there. If you don't, we'll cover it for you. Riley Strand, our videographer, is going to be there. He'll get video of the whole deal, including slow-mo smash of the pumpkin coming down and exploding on poor Wile E. Coyote. This just in, breaking news, the latest estimates on that elk fire that's threatening Dayton and Ranchester, those communities up in the northern Bighorns. That thing has been increased now. The latest aerial reconnaissance shows the fire has grown to just about 50,000 acres, 49,555 acres, 0% containment. You've got IC Commander Casey Cheesebro is on the job along with 200 personnel. Rocky Mountain Area Complex Incident Management Team 3 is fighting this thing as hard as they can. They were dropping water on it yesterday. They were pounding it with slurry bombers, retardant, trying to slow this beast down. This fire is now at 50,000 acres, essentially, with no signs of quitting, burning in heavy timber, down timber. And they're getting after it. They're doing everything they can. Retardant drops as weather allowed. Helicopters dropping water today. Crews are working hard on shoring up containment in some areas and trying to keep this fire away from assets. And they're doing all we can. A reminder, don't fly drones in this area. In fact, just stay out of this area. Highway 14 closed, elk fire raging. And Casey Cheesebro and his crew of 200 doing everything they can to stop this monster fire in Wyoming. Top story of the day for sure. We'll see how things play out tomorrow. For now, though, we got to just call it a morning. What do you say? Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. We'll see you again tomorrow, Friday. Every weekday morning, 6 to 10, it's the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. That's me. We're brand new, just into day 3 of this. We'll do day 4 tomorrow. Join us. Good morning. This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. The new way Wyoming wakes up.
The views and opinions expressed on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show are solely those of its host and do not necessarily represent those of Cowboy State Daily's